The Kythara Harvest 1. The Kythara Harvest, the Kythara Harvest, Byron Avant. The Kythara Harvest, the Kythara Harvest, Chapter 1. Autumn tranquility. The morning sun filtered through the amber leaves of the old oak tree in the Pemberton family's backyard, casting dancing shadows across the weathered wooden deck. Harry Pemberton sat in his favorite chair, a steaming cup of coffee warming his calloused hands as he listened to the gentle symphony of autumn, birds chirping their morning songs, wind chimes creating their melodic dance in the crisp October breeze, and the distant hum of suburban life beginning another ordinary day. At 42, Harry had the build of a man who'd spent 20 years working the steel mills of Millfield Township, Pennsylvania. His shoulders were broad, his hands permanently stained with the honest dirt of hard labor, and his eyes held the quiet satisfaction of a man who provided for his family through honest work. The steel mill paid well enough to keep his family in their modest two-story home on Maple Street, with just enough left over for the occasional family vacation and a small savings account for rainy days. "Dad, can you help me with my science project?" 12-year-old Travis appeared at the sliding glass door, his sandy brown hair still messy from sleep. He was the spitting image of his father at that age, tall for 12, with serious green eyes and a mind that never stopped asking questions. "What's it about this time, buddy?" Harry smiled, setting down his coffee. "Mars colonization. Mrs. Henderson wants us to write about how humans are adapting to life on Mars now that they've been there for a year." Travis plopped down in the chair next to his father, pulling his tablet from under his arm. Harry nodded thoughtfully. The Mars colony had been the biggest news story of 2024, with the first permanent human settlement successfully established on the Red Planet. It seemed like science fiction just a few years ago, but now Travis was studying it like it was ancient history. "Did you know they're already talking about expanding the colony?" Travis continued enthusiastically. "They say by 2030, there could be 10,000 people living on Mars permanently." "Hard to imagine," Harry mused, watching a cardinal land on the bird feeder Maureen had hung from the oak tree. "When I was your age, we thought flying cars would be everywhere by now." The sound of footsteps on the stairs interrupted their conversation. Maureen Pemberton appeared in the kitchen doorway, her auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing the kind of comfortable clothes that marked her as a woman who had chosen to dedicate her life to raising her children rather than pursuing a career outside the home. At 39, she still had the same bright smile that had captured Harry's heart in college, though now it was tempered with the wisdom and slight weariness that came with managing a household of 3 children. "Morning, you too," she said, tying her apron around her waist. "Travis, breakfast in 10 minutes. Where are your brother and sister?" "Corey's still getting dressed and Lisa's in the living room watching cartoons," Travis replied, not looking up from his tablet. Maureen shook her head with familiar exasperation. 10-year-old Corey was notorious for taking forever to get ready for school, while 5-year-old Lisa could sit in front of the television for hours if left to her own devices. "Corey," Maureen called up the stairs. "You have 5 minutes before I come up there." A muffled "Coming, Mom?" echoed down from the second floor. Harry stood and stretched, his back creaking slightly from years of physical labor. "I should get ready for work too. Early shift today." As he headed inside, Harry paused at the living room doorway to watch Lisa, his youngest, sitting cross-legged on the carpet in her favorite purple pajamas. Her blonde curls, so different from her brother's brown hair, caught the morning light streaming through the windows. She was completely absorbed in her cartoons, occasionally giggling at the antics on screen. "Morning, Princess," he said softly. Lisa looked up and beamed at him. "Morning, Daddy. Look, there's a funny alien on TV." Harry glanced at the screen, where a cartoon alien with 3 eyes and purple fur was slipping on a banana peel. "Pretty silly-looking alien, isn't he?" "Ah. Real aliens probably don't look like that, right?" Lisa asked with the serious curiosity that only 5-year-olds could manage. "I don't know, sweetheart. Nobody's ever seen a real alien," Harry replied, ruffling her hair. "But if they're out there somewhere, I bet they're very different from what we see in cartoons." The moment was interrupted by the thundering footsteps of Corey racing down the stairs, his backpack bouncing against his back. At 10 he was the athlete of the family, always moving, always in a hurry, with the kind of boundless energy that exhausted his parents but made him the star of his little league baseball team. Sorry, he panted, sliding into the kitchen in his stocking feet. "I couldn't find my math homework." "Did you check your backpack?" Maureen asked patiently, flipping pancakes on the griddle. "Yeah, and my desk and under my bed and oh wait." Corey unzipped his backpack and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. "Found it." Harry chuckled and headed upstairs to shower and change into his work clothes. The steel mill required safety regulations that meant heavy boots, hard hat, and protective gear, a far cry from the comfortable weekend clothes he preferred. As he stood under the hot water, he thought about how blessed he was to have such a normal, happy life. Good job, loving wife, 3 healthy kids, and a community where they felt safe and secure. 20 minutes later, Harry was dressed and ready for work. The Millfield Steel Works was only a 15-minute drive from their house, one of the advantages of living in a smaller community rather than a big city. He kissed Maureen goodbye, hugged each of the kids, and reminded Travis about his science project. "We'll work on it tonight after dinner," he promised. "Thanks, Dad. Maybe I'll interview some of the Mars colonists online. Mrs. Henderson said we're allowed to use real sources." "That's a great idea, buddy." Harry grabbed his lunchbox from the counter. Maureen still packed his lunch every day, a small kindness that meant more to him than she probably realized, and headed out to his pickup truck. The vehicle was 10 years old but well-maintained, another symbol of their middle-class stability. As he backed out of the driveway, Harry waved to their neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who was retrieving her morning newspaper. She waved back with a smile. The Chens had lived next door for 8 years, and their kids often played together in the shared backyard space between their properties. The drive to work took him through the heart of Millfield Township, past the elementary school where Corey and Lisa would be dropped off later by Maureen, past the middle school where Travis was in 7th grade, and past the small downtown area with its mix of local businesses and chain stores. It was the kind of community where everyone knew everyone else, where kids could still ride their bikes to school without their parents worrying, and where the biggest excitement was usually the high school football games on Friday nights. Harry pulled into the steel mill parking lot at exactly 6:45 a.m., 15 minutes before his shift started. He was a shift supervisor now, promoted 2 years ago after 18 years of working his way up from the factory floor. The responsibility came with better pay and the respect of his co-workers, but it also meant longer hours and more stress when production quotas weren't met. "Morning, Harry," called out Miguel Santos, one of his team leaders, as they walked toward the main building together. "Morning, Miguel. How'd we do on the overnight shift?" "Pretty good. They hit 95% of quota, and no incidents to report." Harry nodded with satisfaction. Safety was always his top priority, followed closely by productivity. The steel mill provided jobs for nearly a third of Millfield's working population, and Harry took seriously his role in keeping both the workers and the business healthy. Inside the mill, the familiar sounds of heavy machinery and industrial production filled the air. Harry made his rounds, checking in with each workstation, reviewing the overnight reports and preparing for the day shift. It was routine work by now, but he still took pride in doing it well. At 8:30 a.m. during his first break, Harry called home to check in with Maureen. "How'd the school run go?" he asked. "Smooth sailing. Travis caught the bus on time, I dropped Corey and Lisa off without any drama, and now I'm enjoying my first cup of coffee in peace." "Living the dream," Harry chuckled. "Oh, speaking of dreams, I almost forgot, I signed us up to bring dessert to the church potluck on Sunday. I was thinking of making that apple crisp recipe your mother gave me." "Sounds perfect. Need me to pick up anything on the way home?" "Just yourself in one piece on time." "I'll do my best." They exchanged "I love yous," and Harry returned to work, thinking about how lucky he was to have such a stable, predictable life. Some people might find it boring, but Harry had seen enough chaos and uncertainty in his younger years to appreciate the value of routine and security. The morning passed quietly, with production running smoothly and no equipment problems to speak of. Harry was reviewing the daily safety reports when his assistant supervisor, Karen Wells, appeared at his office door with a concerned expression. "Harry, you need to see this," she said, holding up her smartphone. "What's wrong?" "There's breaking news about something in space. They're saying it's... well, you should just look." Harry took her phone and read the headline on the news app. "Unknown spacecraft detected approaching Earth, estimated arrival in 24 hours. His first instinct was skepticism. Probably just another satellite or piece of space junk. You know how the media loves to sensationalize anything space-related. But as he read further, his confidence wavered. The article quoted NASA officials, European Space Agency scientists, and even military sources, all confirming that the object was unlike anything they'd ever seen before. It was large, estimated to be several miles in diameter, and it was moving under its own power rather than following the predictable trajectory of space debris. "They're calling it artificial," Karen said quietly. "Harry, they think it's a spacecraft." "That's..." Harry started to say impossible, but the word died in his throat. After all, humans had just successfully established a permanent colony on Mars. If humans could travel between planets, why couldn't someone or something else? "They're holding a press conference at noon," Karen continued. "The president, NASA administrator, and military officials." Harry handed the phone back to her, his mind racing. "Let's not jump to conclusions. It could be anything: experimental military aircraft, some kind of natural phenomenon they don't understand yet. But even as he said it, a cold feeling was settling in his stomach. He thought about his family at home, about his children going about their normal school day, completely unaware that everything might be about to change. Should we send people home? Karen asked. No, Harry said firmly. Not until we know more. No point in panicking over something that might turn out to be nothing. But privately, Harry was already thinking about calling Maureen, about making sure the kids were safe, about what they would do if this turned out to be something more than just another false alarm. The rest of the morning dragged by impossibly slowly. Word of the news spread through the mill like wildfire, despite Harry's attempts to keep everyone focused on their work. Production efficiency dropped as workers clustered around smartphones and radios, trying to get updates on the approaching object. At 11:45, Harry made the decision to shut down the main production line early for lunch break so everyone could watch the presidential press conference. He gathered his team in the break room, where someone had wheeled in an old television set from the administrative offices. The president appeared on screen at exactly noon, flanked by military officials and NASA scientists. Harry had never seen him look so serious. My fellow Americans, the president began, and citizens of the world. At approximately 2:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, NASA's Deep Space Network detected an object approaching Earth from beyond our solar system. This object is artificial in nature, measures approximately 4.7 miles in diameter, and is traveling at speeds that suggest advanced propulsion technology far beyond our current capabilities. The break room was completely silent except for the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. I want to be clear. We do not know the intentions of whoever or whatever has created this spacecraft. We are attempting to establish communication, and we are taking all necessary precautions to ensure the safety of our citizens. The object is expected to reach Earth orbit in approximately 24 hours. Harry felt his hands starting to shake. He thought about Travis's science project on Mars colonization, about Lisa watching cartoon aliens that morning, about the ordinary breakfast conversation that now seemed like it had happened in another lifetime. All military forces worldwide have been placed on high alert, the president continued. We are working closely with our international allies to monitor the situation and respond appropriately. I urge all citizens to remain calm, stay close to home and monitor official news channels for updates. The press conference continued with questions from reporters, but Harry had heard enough. He stood up and addressed his workers. Okay everyone, we're shutting down for the day. Go home to your families. We'll reassess the situation tomorrow morning. What if there is no tomorrow morning? Asked Jake Morrison, one of the younger workers. There will be, Harry said with more confidence than he felt. We're going to be fine. As his workers filed out of the break room, talking in hushed, worried voices, Harry pulled out his phone to call Maureen. It rang 4 times before she answered. Hi honey. You're calling early. Maureen, I need you to listen to me carefully, Harry interrupted. Have you seen the news? No, I was doing laundry. What's wrong? Harry quickly explained what he'd learned about the approaching spacecraft. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Harry, you're scaring me. I'm scared too. But I need you to stay calm, okay? I'm coming home right now. Are the kids still in school? Yes, they don't get out until 3. Good. Pick them up early. Tell the schools there's a family emergency. I don't want them out of our sight until we know what this is about. Okay, I can do that. I love you, Maureen. Everything's going to be okay. I love you too. Drive safely. Harry hung up and grabbed his jacket from his office. As he walked through the now empty mill toward the parking lot, the silence felt ominous rather than peaceful. The familiar sounds of production had been replaced by an eerie quiet that seemed to amplify his growing sense of dread. The drive home felt longer than usual, though Harry found himself unconsciously pressing harder on the accelerator. The radio was full of news updates, expert speculation and man-on-the-street interviews. Everyone seemed to be asking the same questions. Who were they? What did they want? Were they peaceful? Were they hostile? But one comment from a physicist at MIT stuck with Harry. The energy requirements for interstellar travel are enormous. Whatever civilization built this spacecraft has access to technology that's centuries, possibly millennia, ahead of our own. If their intentions are hostile, we may have very little ability to defend ourselves. Harry turned off the radio and drove the rest of the way. Home in silence, trying not to think about what that meant for his family. When he pulled into the driveway, Maureen's minivan was already there. He found her in the kitchen, still in her coat, standing at the window and staring up at the sky as if she expected to see something. Where are the kids? Harry asked, taking her in his arms. Lisa's in the living room. I picked up Corey first, then Lisa, then Travis. They keep asking questions I don't know how to answer. What have you told them? That some people from far away might be coming to visit Earth, and we're not sure what they want yet. Harry nodded. It was probably the best way to explain it to a 5-year-old. Travis knows more, Maureen continued. He's been reading news articles on his tablet. He asked me if the aliens are coming to hurt us. What did you say? I said we don't know if they're aliens and we don't know what they want, but that his father and I will always protect him. They stood together at the window, holding each other, looking up at a sky that appeared completely normal. Somewhere up there, an alien spacecraft was approaching their planet, carrying beings with unknown intentions and unimaginable technology. And here they were, 2 ordinary people with 3 children and a mortgage, trying to process the fact that everything they thought they knew about the universe had just changed forever. Mommy? Daddy? Lisa appeared in the kitchen doorway, clutching her favorite stuffed animal, a purple dinosaur named Barney. Why did I have to come home from school early? Harry knelt down to her level. Because something very special is happening, Princess. Some visitors from very far away are coming to see our planet. Are they nice visitors? We don't know yet. But we're all going to stay together as a family until we find out, okay? Lisa nodded solemnly, then brightened. Will they look like the aliens on TV? Probably not, sweetheart. Will they want to be friends? Harry looked up at Maureen, who was watching the conversation with tears in her eyes. I hope so, Lisa. I really hope so. As if summoned by the conversation, Travis and Corey appeared in the kitchen. Travis looked serious and worried, too serious for a 12-year-old. Corey was bouncing on his toes with nervous energy. Dad, I read that the spaceship is bigger than anything we've ever built, Travis said. And that it's been traveling for thousands of years to get here. Where did you read that? NASA's website. They have a live blog with updates. Travis held up his tablet. Look, they're trying to send radio messages to the ship, but it's not responding. Harry felt a chill run down his spine. A spacecraft that had been traveling for thousands of years suggested beings who planned very far ahead. And if they weren't responding to communications attempts? Dad. Corey interrupted his thoughts. Are we safe? It was the question Harry had been dreading because he honestly didn't know the answer. How could any of them be safe in the face of technology that was millennia ahead of their own? We're going to do everything we can to stay safe, he said carefully. And we're going to stay together no matter what happens. Should we go somewhere else? Travis asked. Like to Grandma and Grandpa's house in Ohio? No, Harry said firmly. Whatever's happening, it's happening everywhere. Running won't help. Our best chance is to stay here in our own home with our neighbors and our community. That evening, the Pemberton family sat down to what felt like their last normal dinner together. Maureen had made spaghetti and meatballs, the kids' favorite, but nobody had much of an appetite. The television in the living room was turned to a 24-hour news channel, providing a constant stream of updates and speculation about the approaching spacecraft. According to the latest reports, the object would reach Earth's orbit sometime between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Observatories around the world were tracking its approach, and the images they were broadcasting showed a massive, geometric structure unlike anything in human experience. It appeared to be made of some kind of dark metal, with no visible lights or markings, traveling through space in complete silence. It looks like a city, Travis observed, studying the latest photographs on his tablet. A dead city, Corey added with a shudder. Don't say that, Maureen chided gently. But Harry thought Corey might be right. There was something deeply unsettling about the spacecraft's appearance, its perfect geometry, its absolute darkness, the way it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. After dinner, Harry helped Travis with his Mars colonization project, though it felt surreal to be discussing human space exploration when they were about to receive visitors from the stars. As they worked together at the kitchen table, Harry found himself wondering if the Mars colonists had any idea what was approaching Earth, and whether their distance from the planet might actually be an advantage. Dad. Travis looked up from his tablet. Do you think the people on Mars are safer than us? The question caught Harry off guard, partly because it echoed his own thoughts, and partly because it suggested Travis was thinking more deeply about their situation than Harry had given him credit for. I don't know, son. Maybe. But remember, they're still humans just like us. We're all part of the same family, whether we're on Earth or Mars or anywhere else. Travis nodded, but Harry could see the wheels turning in his 12-year-old mind. The boy was trying to process concepts that most adults couldn't fully grasp. By 8 o'clock, Harry and Maureen had made the decision to let all 3 children sleep in their parents' bedroom for the night. They dragged in sleeping bags and pillows, turning the master bedroom into an impromptu campout. It was partly for the children's comfort, but mostly because Harry and Maureen couldn't bear the thought of being separated from their kids if something happened during the night. As they were getting the children settled, the news reported that several world leaders had made joint statements calling for calm and international cooperation. The military was maintaining that they were prepared for any eventuality, though they provided no specifics about what that preparation might entail. How can anyone be prepared for something like this? Maureen whispered to Harry as they tucked Lisa into her sleeping bag. I don't think they can be, Harry replied quietly. I think they're just trying to maintain order and prevent panic. Is it working? Harry looked out the bedroom window at their quiet suburban street. Most of the houses had lights on much later than usual, and he could see the glow of televisions and computer screens in windows up and down the block. For now. Lisa fell asleep first, exhausted by the day's unusual events. Corey lasted another hour, finally succumbing to sleep while watching the news coverage. But Travis remained wide awake, his eyes fixed on his tablet screen. Travis, you need to get some sleep, Maureen said gently. I can't. They're updating the trajectory calculations every few minutes. The ship is slowing down. Slowing down? Harry sat up straighter. What do you mean? Look. Travis showed them his tablet screen. NASA says the ship was traveling at about 15% of light speed when they first detected it, but now it's down to about 5% and still decelerating. What does that mean? Maureen asked. Harry felt his mouth go dry. It means they're planning to stop here. They're not just passing by, this is their destination. The three adults, for Travis seemed much older than 12 in that moment, sat in silence contemplating the implications. If the beings aboard that spacecraft had traveled between the stars specifically to reach Earth, they had come here for a reason. The question was, what did they want? Maybe they're explorers, Travis suggested hopefully. Like us going to Mars. Maybe, Harry agreed, though privately he was thinking about the history of exploration on Earth. When technologically advanced civilizations encountered less advanced ones, the results were rarely good for the less advanced society. Maureen must have been thinking along similar lines. Harry, what if... Don't, he interrupted gently. Don't think about worst-case scenarios. Not tonight. Let's just take this one step at a time. But Harry couldn't follow his own advice. As he lay awake in the darkness, listening to his family sleep, his mind kept returning to that physicist's comment on the radio. If their intentions are hostile, we may have very little ability to defend ourselves. Outside, Millfield Township slept uneasily under a sky that would never look quite the same again. Chapter 2. Contact. Harry woke to the sound of his phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. The bedroom was still dark, but he could see the glow of dawn beginning to creep around the edges of the blackout curtains. He grabbed the phone and checked the time. 5:47 a.m. The screen showed 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. His heart sank as he realized what that meant. Something had happened during the night. Harry slipped out of bed carefully, trying not to wake Maureen and the kids, and stepped into the hallway to check his messages. The first text was from his supervisor at the steel mill, sent at 3:22 a.m. Harry, the ship is here. It's in orbit. Everyone needs to stay home until further notice. The next several messages were from friends, neighbors, and co-workers, all sharing fragments of information. The spacecraft had arrived ahead of schedule. It was positioned directly above the North American continent. It was completely silent and unresponsive to all communication attempts. The military had scrambled fighter jets, but the craft showed no reaction to their presence. Harry's hands were shaking as he scrolled through the messages. The last text, sent just 20 minutes ago, was from his brother Jake in Ohio. Harry, turn on the news. Now. Harry crept downstairs to the living room and turned on the television, keeping the volume low. The morning news anchors looked haggard, as if they'd been on the air all night. Behind them, a graphic showed a live satellite feed of the alien spacecraft. Even on the small television screen, it was breathtaking and terrifying. The ship hung motionless in space, a massive geometric structure that seemed to violate the laws of physics by its very existence. It was roughly diamond-shaped, with angular surfaces that created patterns of light and shadow as it rotated slowly in Earth's orbit. The scale was difficult to process. The news ticker reported that it was 4.7 miles in diameter, which made it larger than some small cities. Continues to maintain complete silence despite dozens of attempts at communication from space agencies around the world, the anchor was saying. Military sources confirm that the object is artificial and is maintaining a stable orbit approximately 400 miles above Earth's surface. Harry sank onto the couch, trying to absorb what he was seeing. After thousands of years of wondering whether humanity was alone in the universe, they finally had their answer. And that answer was currently hanging over their heads like a sword of Damocles. Dad. Travis appeared at the bottom of the stairs, still in his pajamas but wide awake. "Is it here?" "Yeah, buddy. It's here." Travis joined him on the couch, staring at the television screen with a mixture of fascination and fear. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. Harry had to admit that Travis was right. Despite his fear, there was something undeniably magnificent about the alien craft. The way it moved through space with such perfect grace, the elegant geometry of its construction, the sheer audacity of its existence, it was a testament to intelligence and engineering capability that humanity could barely comprehend. "Have they said anything yet?" Travis asked. "No. They're not responding to any of our communications. Maybe they don't understand our languages. Maybe. Or maybe they're still deciding what they want to say." Maureen appeared in the doorway, her hair messy from sleep and her eyes wide with concern. "How long has it been there?" "Since about 3:30 this morning," Harry replied. "Nobody's reported any hostile actions, but they're not talking either." Maureen sat down on Harry's other side, and they watched the news coverage together as a family. The reporters were struggling to find new things to say about a situation that was unprecedented in human history. They interviewed scientists, military experts, historians, and philosophers, all trying to provide context for something that had no context. "Mom, I'm hungry," Lisa's voice called from upstairs. "I'll make breakfast," Maureen said, standing up. "We might as well try to maintain some normalcy." "Can we eat in here?" Travis asked. "I want to keep watching." Maureen looked at Harry, who nodded. "Just this once." Corey appeared as Maureen was bringing plates of scrambled eggs and toast into the living room. He took one look at the television screen and stopped dead in his tracks. "Whoa, it's real." "It's real," Harry confirmed. They ate breakfast in front of the television, which felt strange and somehow inappropriate, as if they were watching a movie rather than witnessing a moment that would be remembered for the rest of human history. The news kept cycling through the same basic information. The ship was there. It wasn't responding. World leaders were meeting. The military was on high alert. At 9 a.m., the president appeared on screen for another press conference. "My fellow Americans, the spacecraft that we reported yesterday has arrived and is currently in stable orbit above our planet. I want to emphasize that while this situation is unprecedented, we have no indication of hostile intent from the visitors. The craft has taken no aggressive actions and has shown no signs of preparing to attack." That was reassuring, Harry thought, though the president's next words were less so. "However, I am declaring a state of emergency effective immediately. All citizens are advised to remain in their homes until further notice. Schools and non-essential businesses will remain closed. If you must leave your residence, stay close to home and monitor official news channels for updates." Lisa looked up from her eggs. "Does that mean no school today?" "No school today," Maureen confirmed. "What about tomorrow?" Corey asked. "We'll have to wait and see," Harry replied. The press conference continued with the usual questions from reporters, but Harry was only half listening. His mind was racing through practical concerns. How long would this situation last? Did he need to go to the store for extra food and supplies? Should he try to contact his parents in Florida? What if the power grid failed? What if... His thoughts were interrupted by Travis grabbing his arm. "Dad, look." On the television screen, the satellite feed of the alien spacecraft was showing something new. The surface of the ship, which had been uniformly dark since its arrival, was beginning to show patterns of light. Geometric designs were appearing and disappearing across its hull, like a massive electronic display coming to life. "Appears to be some form of communication attempt," the news anchor was saying, her voice tight with excitement and fear. "The patterns of light have been appearing for approximately 30 seconds now, and they seem to be following some kind of sequence. The lights on the ship's surface were beautiful, flowing patterns of blue and white that cascaded across the dark hull like aurora in the night sky. But there was something alien about the mathematics of the display, something that suggested intelligence operating according to principles that human minds might not be able to grasp." "Are they trying to talk to us?" Lisa asked. "I think so, Princess," Harry replied. The light show continued for several minutes, growing more complex and intense. Then abruptly it stopped. The ship returned to its previous dark, silent state. "NASA reports that they are analyzing the light patterns for any recognizable mathematical or linguistic structures," the anchor continued. "We're told that similar displays were observed simultaneously by observatories around the world, suggesting that the message, if it was indeed a message, was meant for all of humanity rather than any specific nation or region." Harry felt a small measure of relief at that. If the aliens were addressing all of humanity equally, it suggested they might be interested in peaceful contact rather than conquest. His relief was short-lived. At 9:47 a.m., The emergency broadcast system interrupted regular programming with a tone that made everyone in the living room freeze. This is an emergency broadcast from the National Weather Service. Tornado warnings have been issued for the following counties. The list included nearly half of Pennsylvania, including their own county. Residents should take immediate shelter in basements or interior rooms on the lowest floor of sturdy buildings. This is an unusual weather event with multiple tornadoes forming simultaneously across a wide geographic area. Harry looked out the living room window. The sky was clear and blue, with only a few wispy clouds visible. It was a beautiful autumn morning with no sign of severe weather. "That doesn't make sense," Maureen said, voicing what they were all thinking. The weather alert was followed by similar warnings from neighboring states. Reports began flooding in of tornado formations appearing with no advance warning across the entire eastern seaboard. Weather services were baffled. The atmospheric conditions didn't support tornado formation, yet the storms were appearing anyway. "Travis, bring up the weather radar on your tablet," Harry said urgently. Travis's fingers flew over the screen, then he held up the device with a confused expression. "Dad, this can't be right. The radar shows massive storm systems that weren't there an hour ago. And they're all moving in perfect geometric patterns." Harry felt ice in his veins. "Let me see." The weather radar showed something that defied all logic and natural law. Storm systems were forming in perfect concentric circles, expanding outward from dozens of points across the continent. The movement was too precise, too organized to be natural. "Oh my God," Maureen whispered. "The aliens are doing this." As if summoned by her words, the emergency broadcast tone sounded again. This time it was followed by a different voice, deeper, more authoritative. "This is General Patricia Hayes, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We have confirmed that the severe weather events occurring across North America are artificial in nature and appear to be generated by the alien spacecraft currently in orbit. All citizens must take immediate shelter. This is not a drill." The broadcast continued with specific instructions for emergency procedures, but Harry wasn't listening anymore. His mind was reeling from the implications of what they'd just learned. The aliens weren't just visitors, they had the power to control Earth's weather. They could create storms, tornadoes, and hurricanes at will. The question was, why were they doing it? "Dad, look outside," Corey shouted from the window. Harry rushed to join him and felt his blood turn cold. The clear blue sky was rapidly filling with dark clouds that seemed to be forming out of nothing. The wind was picking up, and he could see trees beginning to bend under its force. "Everyone to the basement," Harry ordered. Now. They had never used their basement as a tornado shelter before. Severe weather was rare in their part of Pennsylvania. But as they hurried downstairs with blankets, flashlights, and bottles of water, Harry could hear the wind outside growing stronger by the minute. The basement was unfinished, with concrete walls and a low ceiling. It smelled of dust and dampness, and the single overhead bulb cast harsh shadows on the stored boxes and old furniture. Under normal circumstances, it would have felt like a dreary place to spend time. Now it felt like a sanctuary. They huddled together on an old couch that Harry had been meaning to donate to charity, listening to the storm intensify above them. The wind was howling now and they could hear debris hitting the house. The power flickered several times before finally going out completely, leaving them in darkness except for the beam of Harry's flashlight. "I'm scared," Lisa whispered, crawling into Maureen's lap. "It's okay, baby," Maureen soothed, though her voice was shaking. "We're safe down here." Travis had his tablet out, trying to get news updates on the cellular network. "The internet's down," he reported. "I can't get any signal." The storm raged for 3 hours. They could hear what sounded like a freight train passing overhead, followed by tremendous crashes as trees fell or debris slammed into the house. At one point, something heavy hit the ground so hard that the basement walls shook. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the storm stopped. The silence was deafening after hours of chaos. They sat in the darkness for several minutes, afraid to move, before Harry finally stood up. "I'm going to check upstairs," he said. "Be careful," Maureen called after him. Harry climbed the basement stairs slowly, flashlight in hand, unsure of what he might find. The kitchen looked normal, though he could see debris scattered across the backyard through the window. The power was still out, but the house seemed structurally intact. He made his way through the house, checking each room. There was minor damage, a broken window in Corey's bedroom from a fallen tree branch, water damage in the hallway from rain that had blown in under the front door, but overall they had been incredibly lucky. When he looked outside, however, the scope of the destruction became clear. The street was littered with fallen trees and power lines. Several houses had significant damage, missing roof sections, broken windows, destroyed cars. Mrs. Chen's house next door had a massive oak tree lying across the roof. "Harry?" Maureen's voice called from the basement. Is everything okay? The house is fine, he called back. But the neighborhood took a beating. As his family emerged from the basement and began surveying the damage, Harry found himself thinking about the precision with which the storm had struck. It had been powerful enough to cause widespread destruction, but not quite powerful enough to level entire communities. It was as if the aliens had been making a demonstration, showing humanity what they were capable of without completely destroying everything. But a demonstration of what? Power? Superiority? A warning? The answer came 6 hours later, when the power was restored and they were able to get news updates again. Similar storms had struck every major population center in North America. The damage was extensive but not catastrophic, hundreds of thousands of homes damaged, but relatively few casualties. Infrastructure was disrupted but not destroyed. And in the aftermath of each storm, something else had happened. Reports are still coming in, but eyewitnesses in dozens of cities described the same phenomenon, the news anchor was saying. Following the severe weather events, witnesses report seeing small aircraft descending from the main spacecraft. These smaller craft appear to have landed briefly in various locations before returning to the mother ship. Harry felt his stomach drop. Landed where? Travis was frantically searching for more information on his tablet. Dad, look at this. They're saying the small ships landed near schools, hospitals, shopping centers, anywhere with large numbers of people. And then they left. Left with what? Maureen asked, though Harry suspected she already knew the answer. People, Travis said quietly. They're saying some people are missing. The room went dead silent except for the sound of Lisa playing with her toys in the corner, oblivious to the implications of what her brother had just revealed. How many people? Harry asked. They don't know yet. The reports are just starting to come in. But. Travis looked up from his tablet with frightened eyes. Dad, they're saying it's happening all over the world. Not just here. Harry sank into his chair, trying to process what they'd learned. The aliens hadn't come as explorers or ambassadors. They had come as harvesters. The storms had been a distraction, a way to create chaos and confusion while they collected human beings from around the globe. Collected them for what purpose? He wondered aloud. Nobody answered because nobody wanted to voice the possibilities that were occurring to all of them. As the day wore on, more details emerged. The missing people numbered in the thousands, possibly tens of thousands. They had been taken from every continent, every culture, every walk of life. There seemed to be no pattern to the selections, no logic that human minds could discern. The alien spacecraft remained in orbit, silent and dark once again, offering no explanation for its actions. That evening, as the Pemberton family sat around their kitchen table eating a cold dinner by candlelight, the power had gone out again. Harry made a decision that would change everything. We're not staying here, he announced. What do you mean? Maureen asked. I mean we're leaving Millfield. Tonight. Where would we go? I don't know yet. Somewhere remote, somewhere they're less likely to come looking for more people. Harry, we can't just abandon our home, our life. What life? Harry interrupted, his voice rising. Maureen, they're taking people. Human beings are being harvested like crops, and we have no idea why or when they might come back for more. I will not sit here and wait for them to take my children. The force of his words hung in the air between them. Harry had never spoken to his wife like that before, but then again they had never faced a situation like this before. Dad's right, Travis said quietly. We should go. Go where exactly? Maureen asked. The whole world is dealing with this. There's nowhere to run. Maybe not, Harry admitted. But I'd rather be running than sitting here like sitting ducks. They argued for another hour, weighing options they had never imagined they would need to consider. Finally, Maureen agreed that they should at least leave the immediate area. They would drive to Harry's parents' house in Ohio, then reassess the situation. They spent the rest of the evening packing essential supplies and preparing to leave the only home their children had ever known. As Harry loaded suitcases into the back of his pickup truck, he looked up at the night sky and saw something that made his blood run cold. The alien spacecraft was visible now, a dark shape silhouetted against the stars, blinking with occasional lights. It hung there like a malevolent moon, a constant reminder that humanity was no longer alone, and that their new neighbors might not have their best interests at heart. Daddy? Lisa tugged on his jacket. Are the space people coming back? Harry knelt down and took his daughter in his arms, looking into her innocent 5-year-old eyes. I don't know, Princess. But if they do, we won't be here. Are they bad people? Harry thought about the thousands of missing humans, about the artificial storms, about the demonstration of power that could reshape weather patterns across continents. I hope not, Lisa. I really hope not. But as he carried his daughter to the truck and prepared to drive his family into an uncertain future, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that hope might not be enough. Chapter 3. The hunt begins. The drive through the night was surreal. Highway 77 South, normally busy even in the late evening hours, was nearly deserted except for other vehicles packed with families fleeing their homes. Harry kept the radio tuned to the emergency broadcast system, listening to reports of similar scenes playing out across the country. The great American exodus had begun. "Dad, I have to use the bathroom," Corey announced from the back seat around 2 a.m. They had been driving for 4 hours, making stops only for gas. Harry wanted to put as much distance as possible between his family and Millfield before dawn, operating on the assumption that the aliens were more active during daylight hours. It wasn't based on any hard evidence, just a desperate father's instinct to keep moving. "There's a truck stop ahead," Maureen said, pointing to a sign illuminated in their headlights. "We should all take a break." The Pilot Travel Center appeared out of the darkness like an oasis, its fluorescent lights creating a bubble of artificial normalcy in the chaos of the night. But as they pulled into the parking lot, Harry could see that this place was anything but normal. The parking lot was packed with vehicles, cars, trucks, RVs, motorcycles, all loaded down with possessions and heading in every direction. Families were camped out next to their vehicles, children sleeping in the back seats while parents stood in worried clusters, sharing information and rumors. "Stay close," Harry told his family as they walked toward the building. "Don't talk to strangers and don't let go of my hand, Lisa." Inside the truck stop, the scene was even more chaotic. The convenience store shelves were nearly empty, picked clean by travelers stocking up on supplies. Long lines formed at the bathrooms and the few remaining food counters. The air was thick with tension and the smell of fierce sweat. Harry overheard fragments of conversation as they waited in line. "Took my neighbor's entire family except the baby. Military's not telling us anything. Cousin in Canada says they got hit even worse. Heard they're setting up refugee camps in the mountains." While Maureen took the kids to the bathroom, Harry approached a trucker who was filling his coffee cup at the self-serve station. The man looked like he'd been driving all night, his eyes bloodshot and his hands shaking slightly. "You coming from up north?" Harry asked. "Pittsburgh," the trucker replied. "Left right after the storms hit." "You? Pennsylvania too. Small town called Millfield." "I know Millfield. Steel mill town. They get hit bad. Bad enough. You hear anything about where people are going?" The trucker shook his head. "Everywhere and nowhere. Some heading to Canada, some to Mexico, some to the mountains. Government's telling everyone to go to designated safe zones, but nobody trusts that. Figure if they knew where the safe zones were, those aliens would know too." It was a good point, Harry realized. If the aliens had the technology to travel between stars and control the weather, they probably had the capability to monitor human communications. "What's your plan?" Harry asked. "Got family in Montana. Figure the middle of nowhere is better than the middle of somewhere." "You? Parents in Ohio. Then we'll see." The trucker nodded and extended a weathered hand. "Name's Pete. Good luck out there." "Harry. You too." As they shook hands, Harry felt a strange sense of kinship with this stranger. They were all refugees now, all displaced by forces beyond their understanding or control. When his family returned from the bathrooms, they bought what supplies they could find: bottled water, crackers, beef jerky, batteries for their flashlights, and prepared to return to the road. As they walked back to their truck, Travis tugged on Harry's sleeve. "Dad, look up." Harry followed his son's gaze and felt his heart skip a beat. The alien spacecraft was visible in the clear night sky, much larger and brighter than it had been from Millfield. It seemed to be tracking their movement, following them south. "It's following us," Corey whispered. "It's not following us specifically," Harry said, though he wasn't entirely convinced of that himself. "It's just maintaining its orbit." But as they drove away from the truck stop and continued south, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every few minutes he glanced up through the windshield to see the alien craft still visible among the stars, a constant reminder that nowhere on Earth was truly safe anymore. They reached Harry's parents' house in Columbus, Ohio, just as the sun was rising. The small ranch-style home on Oak Street looked exactly the same as it had during their last visit 6 months ago, but the context had changed everything. What had once been a comfortable retirement home for his parents now felt like a potential sanctuary or trap, depending on what the aliens decided to do next. Harry's father, Bill Pemberton, was already outside watering his garden when they pulled into the driveway. At 72, he was still a sturdy man, with the same steady temperament that had made him a successful high school principal for 30 years. But Harry could see the worry in his father's eyes as the family climbed out of their packed truck. "We saw the news," Bill said simply, embracing his son. Your mother's been cooking since midnight, thinking you might show up. How are things here? Harry asked. Quiet so far. The storms missed Columbus by about 50 miles, but people are spooked. Half the neighborhood's already left for their relatives' places in the country. Harry's mother, Margaret, appeared in the doorway wearing her favorite floral apron and a brave smile. At 68, she was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, the type of grandmother who could make any crisis seem manageable with the right combination of homemade cookies and practical advice. I've got breakfast ready, she announced, hugging each of her grandchildren in turn. And I made up beds for everyone. You look exhausted. As they sat around the familiar kitchen table eating Margaret's pancakes and bacon, Harry filled his parents in on what they had experienced and learned. Bill listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or asking for clarification. Margaret busied herself with cooking and serving, but Harry could tell she was absorbing every word. So what's the plan? Bill asked when Harry finished his account. Honestly, Dad, I don't know. I thought we'd stay here for a few days while we figure out our next move. You're welcome to stay as long as you need, Margaret said firmly. This is still your home. What about your neighbors? Have you talked to anyone about what they're planning? The Johnsons next door are driving to their cabin in Michigan tomorrow. The Garcias across the street already left for Texas. But some folks are staying put. Old Mr. Henderson says he's lived through World War II and the Cold War, and he's not about to be chased out of his home by anybody, even aliens. Harry admired the sentiment, but he wondered if Mr. Henderson truly understood what they were facing. This wasn't like any war or conflict in human history. The enemy had capabilities that made conventional military thinking obsolete. After breakfast, while the kids watched news coverage in the living room with their grandparents, Harry and Maureen stepped onto the back porch to talk privately. Harry, I'm scared, Maureen admitted. Not just for us but for everyone. What if this is just the beginning? What if they keep taking people until... Don't think like that, Harry interrupted, though he was having the same thoughts. We don't know what they want yet. Maybe it was just a one-time thing. Maybe they're studying us and they'll leave when they're done. Do you really believe that? Harry looked up at the morning sky, where the alien spacecraft was still visible as a dark speck among the clouds. No. I think they're planning something bigger. And I think we need to be ready for it. Their conversation was interrupted by Travis bursting through the back door, his tablet in hand and his face pale with excitement and fear. Dad, you need to see this. They're showing video from inside one of the alien ships. Harry and Maureen hurried inside to find the whole family gathered around the television. On screen was grainy, handheld video footage that appeared to have been shot inside some kind of spacecraft. The walls were made of the same dark material as the exterior of the main ship, but they pulsed with patterns of light similar to what they had seen during the aliens' first communication attempt. Obtained by the European Space Agency from a source we cannot identify, the news anchor was explaining. The footage appears to show the interior of one of the smaller craft that were reported landing in various locations yesterday. We want to warn viewers that some of this content may be disturbing. The camera panned across what looked like a holding area or cargo bay. And there, clearly visible in the alien lighting, were people. Dozens of them, sitting in organized rows as if they were passengers on some kind of transport. They appeared to be unharmed but sedated, their eyes closed and their bodies motionless. Oh my God, Margaret whispered, sinking into her chair. The footage continued for another 30 seconds, showing more rows of humans of all ages and ethnicities, all in the same sedated state. Then the transmission cut to static. The video ends there, the anchor continued. We have no information about who shot this footage or how it was transmitted to Earth. The alien spacecraft continues to maintain complete communications silence. Harry felt sick to his stomach. The missing people weren't dead, they were being transported somewhere, stored like cargo. But for what purpose? Dad, Travis said quietly, I looked up some stuff on the internet last night. About the missing people. There's a pattern. What kind of pattern? Travis showed him his tablet screen, which displayed a map of the world with red dots marking the locations where people had been taken. They're taking people from every major population center, but they're not taking everyone. And the people they are taking. They're all healthy. All between certain ages. All with no serious medical conditions. Harry studied the map, his dread growing. How do you know about their medical conditions? I found some forum posts from people whose family members were taken. They're sharing information trying to figure out the pattern. And everyone's saying the same thing, the aliens only took the healthy ones. Healthy ones for what? Maureen asked, though Harry was beginning to suspect he knew the answer. Travis, what else did you find out? There's something else, Dad. Some of the forum posts are from people who work in agriculture. They're saying the pattern looks familiar. Familiar how? Travis hesitated, clearly reluctant to voice what he was thinking. Like livestock selection. Like the aliens are. Breeding stock management. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Harry felt Maureen grab his arm, her fingers digging into his skin. "That's enough internet research for today," Margaret said firmly, reaching for Travis's tablet. "You children don't need to be reading about such things." But Harry knew it was too late. The terrible logic of Travis's discovery was already taking root in all their minds. If the aliens were selecting humans based on health and age, if they were storing them in sedated states for transport. "Harry," Bill said quietly, "I think we need to have a family meeting. The adults, I mean." They sent the children outside to play in the backyard and gathered around the kitchen table. For several minutes nobody spoke. Finally Bill broke the silence. "If that boy is right about the selection criteria, we need to think about who in this family might be at risk." Harry felt his blood turn cold as he realized what his father was suggesting. "Dad, no. We're not splitting up the family. I'm not suggesting we split up permanently. But if they come back, if they come to Columbus, we need to think strategically about who's most likely to be targeted." Maureen was shaking her head. "I won't hide while my children are in danger." "Maureen, honey, you're 39 years old and in perfect health. According to Travis's research, you're exactly the type of person they're looking for." "So are you, Harry," Margaret pointed out. "You're 42. Strong, healthy. If they come back, you might be a target too." The conversation continued for another hour, with various scenarios and contingency plans discussed. But Harry couldn't focus on the logistics. He kept thinking about the video footage, about the rows of sedated humans being transported to an unknown destination for an unknown purpose. That afternoon, while the kids were napping and Margaret was in the kitchen preparing an early dinner, Harry stepped outside to think. The neighborhood was quieter than he'd ever seen it. Most of the houses showed signs of recent abandonment, newspapers piling up on driveways, cars missing from garages, windows dark despite the fact that it was barely past noon. He was walking around the block trying to clear his head, when he noticed something that made him stop dead in his tracks. Mr. Henderson was working in his garden, just as Bill had mentioned. But something was wrong with the scene. The old man was moving too slowly, too mechanically. And when Harry looked closer, he could see that Mr. Henderson's eyes were closed. Harry approached cautiously. "Mr. Henderson? Are you all right?" There was no response. Mr. Henderson continued working, pulling weeds with precise, repetitive motions, but his eyes remained closed and his face showed no expression. "Mr. Henderson." Harry called louder. Still no response. Harry moved closer and gently touched the old man's shoulder. Mr. Henderson's skin was cold despite the warm afternoon, and his breathing was shallow and regular, like someone in a deep sleep. Harry felt panic rising in his chest. He looked around the neighborhood and realized that other figures were visible in yards and windows, all moving with the same mechanical precision, all with their eyes closed. He ran back to his parents' house, his heart pounding. The front door was standing open, which seemed wrong. Harry's father never left doors open. "Dad." Harry called as he stepped inside. "Mom?" He found them in the living room with Maureen and the children. They were all sitting in chairs, arranged in a neat row, their eyes closed and their breathing shallow. Like Mr. Henderson. Like the people in the alien video. "No, no, no," Harry whispered, moving from person to person, shaking them, calling their names. None of them responded. He grabbed his phone to call 911, then realized how pointless that was. If this was happening in Columbus, it was probably happening everywhere. The aliens had come back, and this time they weren't creating storms as a distraction. This time they were doing something much more subtle and much more terrifying. They were putting people to sleep. Harry ran to the window and looked outside. In the clear afternoon sky, he could see multiple dark shapes moving between the clouds. The smaller craft that had been described in news reports. They were hovering silently over the city, invisible except to those who knew to look for them. And Harry realized with growing horror that he was awake while everyone else was asleep. He was conscious while his family and neighbors sat in drugged stupors, waiting to be collected. The question was, why was he still awake? And more importantly, what was he going to do about it? Chapter 4. The awakening. Harry stood frozen in his parents' living room, staring at his sedated family, when he heard footsteps on the front porch. Slow, deliberate footsteps that seemed wrong somehow, too evenly spaced, too rhythmic to be natural human movement. He crept to the front window and peered through the curtains. A figure in what looked like a dark uniform was walking up the driveway toward the house. The person moved with the same mechanical precision as Mr. Henderson, and when Harry got a better look at their face, he felt his blood turn to ice. It was Mrs. Garcia from across the street. But Mrs. Garcia had left for Texas 2 days ago. And her eyes were closed. Harry's mind raced. Whatever the aliens were doing to sedate people, they were also somehow controlling them, turning them into what? Drones? Collectors? More footsteps approached from different directions. Harry peered out the back window and saw 3 more figures walking through the backyard with that same eerie mechanical gait. All neighbors he recognized. All with their eyes closed. They were surrounding the house. Harry looked back at his family, sitting motionless in their chairs. Travis's tablet had fallen from his lap onto the floor, still displaying the forum discussions about alien abduction patterns. Maureen's head was tilted back at an uncomfortable angle. Lisa was slumped forward, her purple dinosaur clutched in her small hands. The front door handle began to turn. Harry's paralysis broke. He grabbed Travis's tablet and shoved it into his pocket, then quickly moved from family member to family member, trying once more to wake them. Nothing. They were completely unresponsive. The front door opened with a soft creak. Harry ran to the back of the house, toward the kitchen. There was a door that led to the basement, and from there, a small window that opened onto the side yard. If he could get outside without being seen, maybe he could. What could he possibly do against aliens who could sedate entire cities and control human minds? But he had to try. He had to at least understand what was happening to his family. Harry opened the basement door and crept down the stairs as quietly as possible. Behind him, he could hear the controlled figures moving through the house with their unnaturally synchronized steps. They seemed to be conducting some kind of systematic search, moving from room to room. The basement window was small and high up on the wall, but Harry managed to squeeze through and drop onto the side yard. He found himself crouched behind his father's tool shed, trying to figure out his next move. The controlled figures, he was starting to think of them as drones, were emerging from houses all over the neighborhood, each carrying sedated people toward the street. Harry watched in horror as Mrs. Garcia effortlessly lifted his father, a 200-pound man, and carried him as if he weighed nothing at all. In the sky above, one of the smaller alien craft was descending toward the neighborhood. It was perhaps 50 feet in diameter, shaped like a flattened disc, and it moved with absolute silence. As it settled onto the street, panels on its underside opened to reveal what looked like a cargo bay. The drones began loading sedated humans into the craft with assembly line efficiency. Harry could see his family among the collected: Maureen, Travis, Corey, Lisa, his parents, all unconscious and helpless. He wanted to run to them, to fight the drones, to do something, anything to save his family. But he forced himself to remain hidden and think. The drones were clearly much stronger than normal humans, and they outnumbered him 20-1. If he revealed himself now, he would simply be captured too, and then there would be no one left to try to rescue them. The loading process took less than 10 minutes. When it was complete, the craft's bay doors closed and it began to rise silently into the sky. Harry watched helplessly as the ship carrying his family disappeared into the clouds, presumably heading for the massive mothership in orbit. As soon as the craft was gone, the drones scattered in different directions, walking back to their homes with that same mechanical precision. Within minutes, the neighborhood was quiet again, as if nothing had ever happened. Harry remained crouched behind the tool shed for another hour, afraid to move, afraid to think about what he had just witnessed. When he finally emerged, the sun was setting and the streets were empty except for a few cats and dogs wandering around looking confused and abandoned. He walked back into his parents' house and found it exactly as he expected, empty, with clear signs that people had been removed. The chairs where his family had been sitting were slightly askew. Maureen's purse was still on the coffee table. Travis's shoes were by the front door. But everyone was gone. Harry sank onto the couch where he had sat with his family that morning, eating his mother's pancakes and planning their next move. The silence in the house was deafening. For the first time since the alien ship had appeared, he was completely alone. And for the first time he allowed himself to really think about what Travis had discovered. If the aliens were indeed selecting humans for livestock purposes, if they were harvesting people the way humans harvested cattle. Harry forced himself to stop that line of thinking. He couldn't afford to fall apart. If there was any chance of rescuing his family, he needed to stay focused and figure out what made him different. Why was he still conscious when everyone else had been sedated? He pulled out Travis's tablet and began searching for information. The internet was still functioning, though most major news sites seemed to be down. However, the forums and social media platforms that Travis had found were still active, and they were filling up with reports from around the world. The pattern was becoming clear. The aliens had conducted simultaneous operations in hundreds of cities across the globe. They had sedated most of the population and harvested selected individuals, just as they had done during the first wave of abductions. But this time the scale was much larger. And this time, a small percentage of people seemed to be immune to the sedation effect. Harry found forum posts from other awake individuals describing experiences similar to his own. They had watched helplessly as their families and neighbors were collected by mind-controlled drones and loaded onto alien craft. The posts were scattered and disorganized, but they painted a picture of a coordinated global harvesting operation. One post particularly caught his attention. "I'm a doctor in Minneapolis. My whole family was taken, but I stayed awake. I've been thinking about why some of us are immune. I have a theory it might be related to blood type or genetic factors. The aliens seem to have some kind of biological weapon that affects most humans but not all. If you're reading this and you're still awake, please post your blood type and any unusual medical history." Harry knew his blood type, O negative, the universal donor. He scrolled through more posts and found others sharing their medical information. The pattern wasn't immediately obvious, but there seemed to be a higher percentage of O negative individuals among those who remained conscious. Another post provided more disturbing information. "I'm an atmospheric scientist in Colorado. I've been monitoring the alien craft movements since this started. The ships are making regular trips between Earth's surface and the mothership in orbit. Based on the frequency and cargo capacity, I estimate they've collected between 500,000 and 1 million people in the last 24 hours. And they're not stopping. I can see more ships heading toward population centers right now." Harry felt sick. 500,000 to 1 million people, taken in a single day. If this pace continued. His thoughts were interrupted by a sound from outside. Harry crept to the window and saw something that made his heart race with a mixture of hope and terror. A military convoy was moving down the street, 3 Humvees and what looked like an armored personnel carrier. As they stopped in front of the house, soldiers began deploying with tactical precision. Harry stepped onto the front porch with his hands visible, not wanting to be mistaken for a threat. "Sir, are you Robert Harrison?" called out the lead soldier, a woman with sergeant's stripes and an authoritative voice. "No, I'm Harry Pemberton. This is my parents' house." "Who's Robert Harrison?" "He's on our list of immune individuals in this area." "Are you alone?" "Yes, my family was. They were taken this afternoon." The sergeant nodded grimly. "I'm Sergeant Martinez, U.S. Army. We're conducting evacuation operations for civilians who show immunity to the alien sedation effect. You need to come with us immediately." "Evacuation to where?" "A secure facility where we can debrief you and provide protection." "Sir, we don't have much time. Our intel suggests the aliens are conducting continuous collection operations, and this area will be hit again." Harry looked back at the empty house where his family had been taken just hours ago. Everything inside him wanted to stay to wait for them to return, to be here if they escaped somehow. But intellectually he knew that Sergeant Martinez was right. The aliens would return, and if he stayed here he would either be sedated and collected or controlled and turned into one of their drones. "Okay," he said finally. "Let me grab a few things." Harry quickly packed a bag with essentials, clothes, important documents, photos of his family and Travis's tablet. As he was leaving, he paused at the mantelpiece where his mother kept family photos. There was one from last Christmas showing all of them together, Harry, Maureen, Travis, Corey, Lisa, and his parents. Everyone was smiling and happy, completely unaware that this might be one of their last times together. He slipped the photo into his pocket and walked out to join the soldiers. The convoy drove north through Columbus, and Harry could see the scope of the devastation. Entire neighborhoods were empty, with abandoned cars scattered along the roads and clear signs of mass disappearances. Occasionally they passed other military vehicles or groups of civilians being evacuated, but the city that had been home to nearly 900,000 people was now largely deserted. "How many people were taken from Columbus?" Harry asked Sergeant Martinez. "We estimate about 80% of the population," she replied. "Similar percentages in most major cities worldwide." "How many people like me?" "Immune people? Globally? We think maybe 2 to 3% of the world population has shown resistance to the sedation effect. That's roughly 200 million people worldwide, but they're scattered and most don't have military protection." Harry tried to process those numbers. If the world population was about 8 billion, and the aliens were targeting the sedated population for harvesting, that meant potentially over 7 billion people were at risk. "Where are you taking me?" "Cheyenne Mountain Complex in Colorado. NORAD headquarters. It's one of the few facilities we're confident the aliens can't penetrate." Harry had heard of Cheyenne Mountain, the underground fortress built during the Cold War to protect military command and control functions from nuclear attack. If anyone could figure out how to fight back against the aliens, it would be the military and scientific personnel gathered there. But as they drove through the empty countryside, Harry couldn't shake the feeling that they were already too late. The aliens had demonstrated capabilities that made human military technology look primitive. They controlled the weather, they could sedate entire populations, and they had interstellar travel technology. What did humanity possibly have that could compete with that? The answer came from an unexpected source. As their convoy reached the outskirts of Columbus, Sergeant Martinez received a radio transmission that she put on speakers so Harry could hear. "This is General Morrison at Cheyenne Mountain to all evacuation teams. We've made contact with the Mars colony. Repeat, we have established communication with the Mars colony. They were not affected by the sedation attacks and they have information that could be critical to our resistance efforts. All immune civilians are to be briefed on this development upon arrival." Harry felt a surge of hope for the first time since watching his family disappear into the alien craft. The Mars colony was small, only about 300 people, but they were humans who had been outside the aliens' immediate reach. If they had learned something, discovered some weakness or blind spot. "Sergeant," Harry said, "how long until we reach Cheyenne Mountain?" "About 18 hours if we drive straight through." Harry looked up at the sky through the vehicle's window. Somewhere up there, his family was being held prisoner by beings whose motives and capabilities he couldn't even begin to understand. But for the first time since this nightmare began, he had a destination and a purpose. He was going to learn everything he could about the aliens. He was going to find their weaknesses. And somehow, some way he was going to get his family back. Even if it meant fighting a war against an enemy with technology that was thousands of years more advanced than humanity's. Chapter 5. Underground. The Cheyenne Mountain complex was unlike anything Harry had ever seen. Built inside a granite mountain during the Cold War, the facility was designed to survive a direct nuclear strike. Now it was serving as humanity's last command center in the war against an alien invasion that most of the world didn't even know they were fighting. The drive from Columbus had taken 19 hours, with stops for fuel and food at military checkpoints that were processing streams of immune refugees from across the country. Harry learned during the journey that similar evacuation operations were taking place worldwide. Immune individuals were being transported to hardened military facilities in hopes of organizing some kind of resistance. But the numbers were sobering. Of the estimated 200 million immune individuals worldwide, only a fraction could be reached and evacuated before the aliens returned to collect them. Most would have to fend for themselves or try to reach the underground facilities on their own. As their convoy passed through the final security checkpoint and entered the mountain tunnel, Harry felt like he was descending into another world. The artificial lighting, the constant hum of ventilation systems, and the presence of heavily armed guards created an atmosphere that was both protective and claustrophobic. "Welcome to the Resistance," Sergeant Martinez said as they climbed out of the vehicle in an underground parking garage that seemed to stretch on forever. Harry was processed through several security stations, given temporary housing assignment in what used to be officer quarters, and told to report to the main briefing room at 0800 hours the next morning. It was nearly midnight by the time he found his assigned room, a small but comfortable space with a narrow bed, a desk and a small bathroom. He sat on the bed and pulled out his phone to check for any messages from his family. Nothing, of course. The aliens weren't running a customer service operation. But he found dozens of missed calls and messages from friends and extended family members who had seen the news and were trying to reach him. Most of the messages were variations on the same theme. "Are you okay? Where are you? What's happening?" But one message from his brother Jake in Florida stood out. "Harry, Sarah and the kids were taken yesterday. I'm still awake, driving north to try to find someplace safe. The government is saying to report to military bases, but I don't trust them. I'm going to try to get to you somehow. Take care of yourself." Harry felt a stab of guilt. His brother was out there somewhere, probably driving through dangerous territory with no protection, while Harry was safe in an underground bunker. But there was nothing he could do to help Jake now except hope that his brother would find his way to safety. He lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling and thinking about his family. Where were they now? Were they still sedated, or had they woken up to find themselves prisoners on an alien spacecraft? Were they in pain? Were they scared? Harry forced himself to stop thinking about it. Those questions would drive him insane, and he needed to stay focused if he was going to be any help to anyone. The next morning, Harry joined about 200 other immune civilians in the main briefing room. The group was diverse, men and women of all ages and ethnicities from all walks of life. But they all shared the same haunted expression of people who had lost everything and were trying to figure out how to keep going. General Patricia Morrison stepped up to the podium at exactly 0800 hours. Harry recognized her from the emergency broadcasts. She was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff who had confirmed that the weather attacks were artificial. In person, she was a small woman with gray hair and steel blue eyes that radiated competence and authority. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "you are here because you represent humanity's best hope for survival. Each of you has demonstrated immunity to the alien sedation technology, which makes you invaluable to our resistance efforts. Over the next several hours, you will be briefed on everything we know about the alien threat, and then we will discuss how you can contribute to our fight back. General Morrison pressed a button on her remote, and the large screen behind her displayed a satellite image of the alien mothership in orbit. As of 0600 hours this morning, we estimate that the aliens have collected approximately 2.3 billion human beings over the past week. That's roughly 30% of the world's population. The rate of collection appears to be accelerating. A murmur ran through the room. Harry felt sick at the numbers. However, the general continued, we have reason for hope. 3 days ago we established communication with the Mars colony. The 314 colonists were not affected by the sedation attacks, and they have been conducting observations of the alien activities from their unique vantage point. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the colony's chief scientist, will now brief you on what they have discovered. The screen changed to show a video feed from Mars. Dr. Rodriguez appeared, a woman in her 40s with dark hair and serious eyes, standing in what looked like a laboratory module on the Martian surface. Greetings from Mars Base Alpha, Dr. Rodriguez said, her voice slightly delayed due to the transmission time. I want to start by saying that we are with you in spirit, and we are committed to helping Earth defend itself against this threat. She gestured to someone off camera, and the image changed to show a view of space from Mars's perspective. From our position, we have been able to observe the alien operations with instruments that are outside their immediate influence. What we have learned is both disturbing and encouraging. The image showed several alien spacecraft in Earth's orbit, along with what appeared to be a much larger structure. The mothership you see in Earth orbit is not their primary vessel. It appears to be a collection and processing facility. We have detected a much larger structure positioned on the far side of Earth's moon, hidden from your ground-based observations. Harry felt his blood run cold. The aliens had been planning this operation for much longer than anyone had realized. The encouraging news, Dr. Rodriguez continued, is that we have identified several potential weaknesses in their technology and operations. The image changed to show technical diagrams that Harry couldn't understand. First, their sedation technology appears to be biologically specific. It affects most humans but not all, and it doesn't affect other Earth species. This suggests it was designed specifically for human physiology, which means they have been studying us for some time. But it also means the technology has limitations. Second, their collection operations follow predictable patterns. They target population centers during specific time windows, and they appear to have limited numbers of collection craft. This suggests their resources, while vast, are not infinite. Third, and most importantly, their ships show electromagnetic signatures that suggest they are vulnerable to certain types of energy weapons. We believe that if Earth's military forces could coordinate a focused attack using experimental directed energy weapons, you might be able to damage or even destroy their collection craft. General Morrison took over the briefing. Dr. Rodriguez and her team are working around the clock to provide us with targeting data and tactical recommendations. Meanwhile, we are mobilizing every available resource to develop and deploy the weapons system she has identified. The general paused and looked around the room. But here's the reality. We estimate we have perhaps 2 weeks before the aliens complete their collection operations and depart with their human cargo. If we're going to mount an effective resistance, it has to happen quickly. An older man in the front row raised his hand. General, what about the people who have already been taken? Is there any chance of rescuing them? Unknown, the general replied honestly. Our priority has to be stopping the ongoing collection operations and protecting the remaining human population. If we can accomplish that, then we can consider rescue operations. Harry felt frustrated by that answer, but he understood the logic. There was no point in attempting rescue missions if the aliens were simply going to collect everyone else in the meantime. The briefing continued for another 2 hours, covering everything from the aliens' technology to the global military response to the logistics of underground survival. By the end, Harry had a much clearer picture of humanity's situation, and it was even worse than he had imagined. The aliens weren't just randomly collecting humans. They appeared to be conducting a systematic harvesting operation with specific selection criteria and clear objectives. And based on their technology and organizational capabilities, they had probably been planning this operation for decades or even centuries. But there was one piece of information that gave Harry hope. According to Dr. Rodriguez's observations, the alien collection craft had to return to the mothership periodically to unload their human cargo. If the military could time an attack correctly, they might be able to intercept one of those craft and learn more about where the humans were being taken. After the briefing, Harry was assigned to a research team that was analyzing alien movement patterns. His job was to help identify potential targets for military strikes by studying the timing and locations of collection operations. It wasn't the kind of direct action Harry wanted to take. Every instinct told him to grab a weapon and try to fight his way onto one of the alien ships to find his family. But he forced himself to think strategically. The research work might actually help rescue more people in the long run. As he settled into his new assignment, working with a team of scientists and military analysts in a high-tech command center deep inside the mountain, Harry tried to maintain hope that his family was still alive somewhere in the vast alien collection system. But late at night, alone in his small underground room, he couldn't stop thinking about Travis's research into livestock management patterns. If the aliens really were treating humans like cattle, then his family might already be dead. Harry pushed that thought away and focused on the work. Somewhere out there, the aliens were continuing their harvest. And somewhere in the Resistance command structure, people were planning humanity's counterattack. He just hoped it wouldn't be too late. Chapter 6. The Resistance forms. 3 days into his assignment at Cheyenne Mountain, Harry made a discovery that changed everything. He was working the night shift in the analysis center, poring over tracking data from alien collection craft movements, when he noticed something that the computer algorithms had missed. The collection ships weren't just following random patterns, they were avoiding certain geographic areas entirely. Dr. Chin, Harry called to the lead analyst, a soft-spoken woman who had been evacuated from Stanford University. "Can you look at this map overlay?" Dr. Chin approached his workstation, adjusting her glasses as she studied the display. Harry had superimposed the alien collection flight paths over a geological survey map of North America. "What am I looking at?" she asked. "The aliens aren't just avoiding military installations," Harry explained. "They're avoiding areas with high electromagnetic interference. Look, they never fly collection routes over areas near major radio telescope installations, high-voltage power transmission lines, or certain types of mineral deposits." Dr. Chin stared at the map for a long moment, then grabbed a phone to call General Morrison. "General, you need to get down to the analysis center immediately. We may have found something important." 20 minutes later, the command center was bustling with activity as senior military and scientific personnel studied Harry's discovery. General Morrison stood at the center of the group, asking rapid-fire questions. "How confident are you in this pattern analysis?" she asked Harry. "Very confident. I've checked it against 6 days of flight data from 12 different regions. The correlation is consistent." "Dr. Rodriguez," the general spoke into a communicator connected to Mars Base Alpha, "are you seeing this data?" "Yes, General," came the reply from Mars. "This is extremely significant. It suggests their navigation and control systems are susceptible to electromagnetic interference. That's potentially a major vulnerability." Dr. Chen was already pulling up additional data. "If Harry's right about this, we might be able to create dead zones, areas where the alien craft can't operate effectively." "How quickly could we implement something like that?" General Morrison asked. "That depends on the specific type of interference they're sensitive to." Dr. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom. "We would need to run tests, but theoretically we could set up electromagnetic pulse generators or high-powered radio transmitters in strategic locations." Harry felt a surge of excitement. For the first time since this nightmare began, they had identified something that might actually work against the aliens. But his excitement was tempered by the next piece of information Dr. Chin discovered. "General, I'm seeing increased alien activity in the Pacific Northwest. Multiple collection craft converging on the Seattle-Portland corridor. This looks like a major harvesting operation." The display screens around the command center lit up with real-time satellite feeds showing alien craft descending toward the population centers of Washington and Oregon. Harry could see the distinctive patterns he had become familiar with, the ships moving in coordinated formations, preparing to sedate and collect thousands more humans. "How many people are we talking about?" General Morrison asked. "Combined metropolitan areas. Roughly 4 million people," Dr. Chin replied grimly. "And how many immune individuals in that region?" "Unknown. Maybe 100,000 to 150,000 if the global averages hold." Harry watched the screens and felt sick. Even if they could implement his electromagnetic interference idea, it would take days or weeks to deploy. They couldn't help the millions of people who were about to be collected in the Pacific Northwest. "General," Harry said, "what about a direct military strike?" "We know where they're going to be." "We've tried that," General Morrison replied. "Conventional weapons have no effect on their craft. The ships appear to have some kind of energy shielding that deflects or absorbs missile and artillery strikes." "What about nuclear weapons?" The room went quiet. Finally, the general answered. "The Pentagon has discussed that option. But using nuclear weapons over populated areas would kill the very people we're trying to protect. And we're not certain it would be effective against their technology." Harry thought about his brother Jake, who was somewhere out there trying to reach safety. There was a chance he could be in the Pacific Northwest right now, driving straight into the middle of the largest alien collection operation yet. Dr. Rodriguez, General Morrison called to Mars. How long would it take to test Harry's electromagnetic interference theory? Give me 12 hours, came the reply. I can run simulations based on the observational data we've collected. If the theory holds up, I can provide specific recommendations for implementation. Do it. In the meantime, all analysis teams switch to emergency protocols. I want continuous monitoring of alien activities worldwide. If we can find more patterns, more vulnerabilities, we might be able to save some of those people. The next 12 hours were the longest of Harry's life. He worked without breaks, analyzing every piece of data they had collected about alien movements and technologies. Other teams were running similar analyses on different aspects of the alien operations, their communication systems, their energy signatures, their collection procedures. Around the command center, dozens of large screens showed live feeds from around the world. Harry could see alien craft conducting collection operations in Asia, Europe, Africa, and South America. The scope of the harvesting operation was staggering. They were literally emptying entire cities of human life. But there were also signs of resistance. Military forces in several countries had begun implementing evacuation procedures for immune individuals. Underground bunkers and protected facilities were being activated worldwide. Small groups of survivors were organizing in remote areas. Humanity was fighting back, but it felt like trying to stop an avalanche with snowballs. At 1,400 hours, Dr. Rodriguez came back online with her analysis results. General Morrison, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that Harry's electromagnetic interference theory appears to be correct. Based on our observations, the alien craft show significant navigation difficulties when operating near sources of strong electromagnetic fields. Harry felt a rush of hope. The bad news, Dr. Rodriguez continued, is that the level of electromagnetic interference required to seriously disrupt their operations would also knock out most of Earth's electronic infrastructure. Power grids, communication systems, even hardened military equipment would be affected. How badly affected? The general asked. Think of it as a controlled electromagnetic pulse. Anything not specifically shielded would be damaged or destroyed. You would essentially be trading alien vulnerability for the collapse of modern technological civilization. The command center fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. They had found a way to hurt the aliens, but using it would cripple human society at the same time. Is there any way to make it more targeted? Harry asked. To focus the interference on specific areas? Theoretically, yes, Dr. Rodriguez replied. But it would require precise coordination and specialized equipment that might take weeks to manufacture and deploy. General Morrison looked around the room at her staff. How much time do we have before the aliens complete their harvesting operations? Dr. Chen consulted her analysis reports. Based on current collection rates and the patterns we've observed, I estimate 7 to 10 days before they reach their target numbers and begin departing. Target numbers? Harry asked. We believe they're collecting specific percentages of the human population from each region. The percentages vary, but they seem to be taking about 30 to 40% of the available population in most areas. Harry felt a chill. If the aliens were only taking 30 to 40% of the human population, what did that say about their intentions for the remaining 60 to 70%? Dr. Rodriguez, General Morrison said, I'm going to ask you a difficult question. In your opinion, what are the aliens planning to do with the humans they're collecting? There was a long pause before the answer came from Mars. General, based on the systematic nature of their selection criteria and the infrastructure we've observed them constructing in space, I believe they are establishing a breeding program. They appear to be selecting humans for genetic diversity and physical fitness, consistent with livestock management practices. Harry closed his eyes and tried not to think about his family being treated like breeding stock by alien farmers. And the humans they're not collecting? The general pressed. Unknown. They may be planning to leave them on Earth as a control population. Or, Dr. Rodriguez's voice trailed off. Or what? Or they may be planning to eliminate them once the collection operations are complete. From an agricultural perspective, you don't typically maintain populations you're not planning to use. The implications hung in the air like a physical presence. If Dr. Rodriguez was right, the aliens weren't just harvesting part of humanity, they were deciding the future of the entire species. General, Harry said, we have to try the electromagnetic pulse option. Even if it damages our infrastructure, at least some humans would survive. If we do nothing and Dr. Rodriguez is right about their intentions. I understand the stakes, General Morrison replied. But I can't make a decision that would essentially end technological civilization without consulting with world leaders. And most world leaders are either missing or in hiding. What about the immune populations in other countries? Are they organized enough to coordinate something like this? Dr. Chin checked her communications logs. We're in contact with resistance groups in 12 countries. The largest organized groups are here in North America, in Australia, and in Northern Europe. But overall coordination is challenging. Harry thought about the millions of people who would be collected in the next week if they couldn't mount an effective resistance. He thought about his family somewhere in the alien collection system. He thought about his brother Jake, driving through dangerous territory with no protection. General, he said, what if we started small? What if we targeted a single alien collection craft with a localized electromagnetic pulse? Just to test the theory and see if we can rescue some of the people they've taken? General Morrison looked at him with interest. Go on. The alien craft have to return to the mothership regularly to unload their human cargo. If we could predict when and where one of them would be flying, we could set up a targeted EMP and try to bring it down. Dr. Rodriguez, is that feasible? It's possible, came the reply from Mars. You would need to position EMP generators along a predicted flight path, synchronize the pulse timing precisely, and have recovery teams standing by. But yes, it could work. Harry felt his heart racing. It wasn't a solution to the overall alien threat, but it might be a way to rescue some of the people who had been taken. It might be a way to find his family. How quickly could we set up something like that? He asked. General Morrison looked around the command center. Dr. Chin, how good are our predictions of alien flight paths? Very good for the main collection routes. Less reliable for individual craft. And how long to acquire and position EMP equipment? 48 to 72 hours, assuming we can commandeer existing military equipment. Harry felt a surge of hope and determination. They had a plan. It was dangerous, it might not work, and it would only save a small number of people. But it was better than sitting underground and watching the aliens harvest humanity without resistance. General, I volunteer for the recovery team, Harry said. Mr. Pemberton, you're a civilian with no military training. But I'm immune to their sedation technology, and I have more motivation than anyone else to make this work. My family is on one of those ships. General Morrison studied his face for a long moment. Very well. But you'll be working with a full military team and you'll follow orders. This is not a solo rescue mission. Understood. As the command center erupted into activity around the planning of humanity's first direct counterattack against the aliens, Harry allowed himself to feel hope for the first time in a week. Somewhere out there, his family was waiting for rescue. And now, finally, he had a chance to bring them home. Chapter 7. First strike. The abandoned missile silo in eastern Colorado had been decommissioned for 15 years, but it still retained the massive underground infrastructure needed for the Resistance's first strike operation. Harry stood in the former launch control room, now filled with hastily installed electromagnetic pulse generators and tracking equipment, watching technicians make final preparations for what General Morrison had codenamed Operation Retrieval. 48 hours had passed since they'd conceived the plan to intercept an alien collection craft. In that time, military engineers had worked around the clock to modify existing EMP weapons into a coordinated array capable of generating a localized electromagnetic field powerful enough to disrupt alien navigation systems. The target was a collection craft that their analysis predicted would pass through this airspace in approximately 6 hours, returning from a harvesting operation in Denver to the mothership in orbit. If their calculations were correct, and if Harry's electromagnetic interference theory held up, they would have one chance to bring down an alien ship and rescue whoever was aboard. Mr. Pemberton, Colonel Sarah Blake approached him with a grim expression. Blake was the military commander of the operation, a career Air Force officer who specialized in unconventional warfare. I need to go over the recovery protocol with you one more time. Harry nodded, trying to project confidence he didn't entirely feel. I'm ready. The EMP burst will last approximately 30 seconds. If it works, the alien craft should lose power and begin an emergency landing. Our estimates suggest it will come down somewhere within a 5-mile radius of this facility. Blake pointed to a tactical map showing the surrounding terrain. You'll be part of a 6-person recovery team. Your job is to locate and secure any human survivors while the military team handles potential alien threats. What kind of alien threats should I expect? Unknown. We've never seen the aliens themselves, only their controlled human drones. But we have to assume they'll be aboard the craft and potentially hostile. Harry thought about the video footage Travis had found showing sedated humans stored in rows inside an alien ship. What about the humans? Will they still be sedated? Dr. Rodriguez's analysis suggests the sedation effect is maintained by the alien technology. If we disable their ship, the humans should begin to wake up. But they'll be disoriented and potentially panicked. And if our families are on that ship? Colonel Blake's expression softened slightly. Then we'll do everything we can to get them out safely. But Mr. Pemberton, I need you to understand that this is primarily a reconnaissance mission. Our main objective is to learn more about alien technology and capabilities. Rescue is secondary. Harry nodded, though privately he disagreed. As far as he was concerned, rescue was the only objective that mattered. Dr. Chin, Blake called to the lead analyst, what's our latest tracking data? The target craft is currently over the Denver metropolitan area, Dr. Chin replied, studying her monitoring equipment. Based on its movement pattern, it should reach our intercept zone in approximately 5 hours and 40 minutes. Payload status? Unknown. We estimate between 200 and 800 human subjects based on the size of the craft and its time in the collection area. Harry felt his stomach clench. Somewhere in that alien ship, 200 to 800 people were being transported to an unknown fate. Some of them might be from Denver. Some of them might be people he knew. Some of them might be his family. Sir, one of the technicians called out, we're getting reports of increased alien activity worldwide. Multiple collection craft are converging on population centers in Asia and Europe. Colonel Blake walked over to check the global monitoring displays. It looks like they're accelerating their timeline. Dr. Chin, does this affect our intercept calculations? Negative. Our target is still on schedule. Harry studied the global displays and felt a chill. The aliens were conducting simultaneous operations on every continent. The scope of the harvesting was staggering. It looked like they were trying to collect as many humans as possible before Earth's remaining military forces could organize effective resistance. Colonel, Harry said, what happens if this works? If we successfully intercept one craft, won't they just adapt their tactics? Probably. But even if we can only do this once, the intelligence we gather could be invaluable for planning larger operations. That made sense, but Harry was thinking about the bigger picture. If humanity could bring down one alien craft, maybe they could bring down more. Maybe they could disrupt the entire harvesting operation. Dr. Rodriguez, Colonel Blake spoke into the Mars communication link. Are you monitoring our preparations? Yes, Colonel, came the reply from the Red Planet. I want to emphasize that this is largely theoretical. We're making educated guesses about alien technology based on limited observational data. Accomplish that without needing us to board their ships voluntarily. The offer to let us observe their operations suggests they're genuine about wanting cooperation. I want to go too, Travis said. Absolutely not, Harry replied immediately. You're 12 years old. Dad, I'm the one who figured out how to communicate with them. And I might be able to understand their technology better than the adults. It was a painful reminder that Travis had grown up faster than any child should have to. But Harry realized his son was right. Travis had demonstrated unique insights into alien behavior and technology. General Morrison, Travis continued, if they really are trying to save humanity, then you need people who can help establish ongoing communication and cooperation. I think I can do that. General Morrison looked at Harry. The decision is yours, Mr. Pemberton. He's your son. Harry studied Travis's determined expression and realized that his boy had become something more than a child over the past few weeks. The alien crisis had forced Travis to develop capabilities and responsibilities far beyond his years. If we go, Harry said finally, we go together. No splitting up no matter what happens. Agreed, Travis said with relief. Another message appeared on the display, transport craft landing outside facility in 5 minutes. Human delegation of 1 to 6 individuals welcome. Duration of visit, 2 Earth hours. Safety guaranteed. General Morrison made her decision. Dr. Chin, Colonel Blake, and Mr. and Mrs. Pemberton will constitute our delegation. Travis, you'll accompany your father as a communication specialist. Mrs. Pemberton? Harry was confused. A voice spoke from behind him. Actually, I think they mean me. Harry turned around and felt his heart stop. Maureen was standing in the doorway of the command center, looking tired but healthy, accompanied by 2 people in what appeared to be alien medical uniforms. Maureen. Harry ran to his wife and swept her into his arms. How are you here? How are you awake? The aliens brought me down in a medical transport 20 minutes ago, she explained, tears streaming down her face. They said they needed someone who could verify their treatment of the evacuated populations. Harry, I've seen where they're taking people. I've seen the children. Are Corey and Lisa safe? They're safe. They're in what the aliens call educational facilities. Places where human children are being taught about their new homes while their parents undergo medical processing. Travis joined the family embrace. Mom, what are the new homes like? Travis, thank God you're safe. Maureen held her son tightly. The new homes are incredible. They're building habitat stations around other stars, places where humans can live safely while Earth recovers from the solar event. Recovers? Dr. Chin asked. The solar event won't be permanent? According to the aliens, the solar instability will last approximately 200 Earth years. After that, the sun will stabilize and Earth will be habitable again. They're planning to bring people back once it's safe. Harry felt a surge of hope. Not only were the aliens trying to save humanity, but they were planning to eventually restore them to their home planet. Mrs. Pemberton, General Morrison said, we need you to brief us on everything you've observed during your time with the aliens. General, with respect, I think it would be better if you saw it for yourself. The delegation they're offering would give you a complete picture of their operations. Another message appeared on the display, transport craft has landed. Delegation ready for departure? General Morrison looked around the command center. This is potentially the most important moment in human history. Are we agreed to proceed with the diplomatic mission? Harry looked at his reunited family, at the military and scientific personnel who had been fighting desperately to save humanity, and at the alien message offering cooperation and hope. We're ready, he said. As they prepared to leave the underground facility and board an alien spacecraft, Harry realized that everything was about to change again. But for the first time since this crisis began, the change might actually be for the better. Humanity's first contact with an alien civilization wasn't ending in conquest or destruction. It was beginning with an offer of salvation. Chapter 10. The truth: the alien transport craft was unlike anything Harry had imagined. As he, Travis, Maureen, Dr. Chin, and Colonel Blake walked up the boarding ramp, Harry was struck by how organic the interior felt. The walls seemed to pulse gently with a soft, warm light, and the air had a clean, slightly sweet smell that reminded him of mountain springs. Welcome aboard, a voice said in perfect English. Harry looked around but didn't see anyone speaking. The voice is coming from the ship itself, Maureen explained quietly. Their artificial intelligence systems are incredibly advanced. Mrs. Pemberton is correct, the ship's voice continued. I am the vessel's management consciousness. You may address me as navigator. I will be your guide during this visit. The interior of the ship was spacious and comfortable, with what appeared to be observation stations arranged around the central area. As they settled into seats that seemed to adjust automatically to each person's body, Harry felt the craft lift off with barely a sensation of movement. Navigator, Travis spoke up, can you show us the people who have been evacuated? Certainly, young Travis. I understand you have been instrumental in establishing communication between our species. The walls of the craft became transparent, revealing the vast interior of the alien mothership as they approached it. Harry gasped at the scale. The ship was so large that it contained what looked like entire cities, complete with parks, buildings, and open spaces where thousands of people could be seen going about daily activities. This is one of 17 evacuation vessels currently in Earth orbit, Navigator explained. Each ship can accommodate approximately 500,000 humans in comfortable living conditions. Navigator, Dr. Chin asked, who are your people? Where do you come from? We are the Kythara from the star system you call Vega. We are a collective of species that has been monitoring developing civilizations for approximately 50,000 Earth years. Monitoring for what purpose? Colonel Blake asked with military directness. To provide assistance during extinction-level events. Your species is not the first we have helped relocate during planetary catastrophes. As their transport docked with the mothership, Harry felt a mixture of awe and apprehension. They were about to enter a world created by beings whose technology and capabilities seemed almost godlike. The airlock opened to reveal a Kythara waiting to greet them. Harry had expected something dramatically alien, but the being was surprisingly humanoid, tall and slender, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. It wore what appeared to be a simple gray uniform and moved with fluid grace. I am Dr. Aylin, the being said, its voice similar to the ship's artificial intelligence but with more subtle emotional undertones. I am the medical coordinator for human evacuations. Mrs. Pemberton has been assisting me in understanding human psychological needs during the relocation process. Dr. Aylin, Harry said, my wife told me that my other children are in educational facilities. Can we see them? Of course. That is one of the primary purposes of your visit, to verify that all evacuated humans are being treated with care and respect. They followed Dr. Aylin through corridors that seemed to stretch on forever, past observation windows showing vast residential areas where Harry could see humans living in what appeared to be comfortable apartment-style accommodations. Children were playing in parks, adults were working in gardens, and there were even what looked like schools and recreation centers. "This is remarkable," Dr. Chin said, studying the environmental design. "You've created a fully functional human habitat." "We have had extensive experience with refugee populations," Dr. Aylin explained. "Each species has specific psychological and social needs that must be met for successful long-term survival." They reached what Dr. Aylin called the educational complex, and Harry's heart began racing as they approached a large viewing window. Inside he could see hundreds of children of various ages engaged in activities that looked remarkably similar to a normal Earth school. "There," Maureen pointed. "Corey's in the blue shirt, and Lisa's at the art table with the purple hair ribbon." Harry pressed his hand against the viewing window, watching his 5-year-old daughter carefully coloring a picture while his 10-year-old son participated in what looked like a science experiment. They appeared healthy, happy, and completely unaware that they were aboard an alien spacecraft. "They don't know they're in space?" Travis asked. "The habitat environments are designed to feel familiar and comfortable," Dr. Aylin explained. "Most evacuated humans believe they are in protective facilities on Earth. We find that gradual revelation of their situation produces less psychological trauma." "When will you tell them the truth?" Harry asked. "When they are psychologically prepared to understand it. For children, this process typically takes several months. For adults, the timeline varies based on individual adaptation capabilities." Colonel Blake had been studying the facility with professional interest. "Dr. Aylin, what happens to humans who resist the relocation process?" "Resistance is rare once individuals understand the alternative. However, we have facilities for those who require additional psychological support during the transition period." "And what about the humans you haven't evacuated yet?" Dr. Chin asked. "Your message said you need to relocate 6.8 billion people, but Earth only has about 3 weeks before the solar event." Dr. Aylin's expression, if it could be called an expression, became more serious. "This is the critical challenge we face. Our current evacuation rate is approximately 200,000 humans per day across all 17 ships. To reach our target population, we would need to increase that rate by a factor of 10. Travis was doing quick calculations in his head. "Dr. Aylin, that would require massive cooperation from Earth's remaining population and governments." "Correct. Which is why we have requested assistance from your resistance leaders. If humans stop hiding from our evacuation teams and begin actively cooperating with the relocation process, we can save far more people." Harry thought about the implications. "Dr. Aylin, what happens to the people who can't be evacuated in time?" The alien physician was quiet for a long moment. "Mr. Pemberton, the solar event will render Earth's surface uninhabitable for approximately 200 years. Humans who remain on the planet will not survive." The brutal math was inescapable. Even with maximum cooperation, the aliens could probably evacuate 6 billion people at most. That would still leave over 1 billion humans to die when the solar catastrophe struck. "Is there any alternative?" Dr. Chin asked. "Any way to protect people on Earth itself?" "Deep underground facilities might provide temporary protection for small populations," Dr. Aylin admitted. "But the electromagnetic radiation from the solar event will penetrate deep into the planet's crust. Even your most protected installations would only extend survival by months, not years." They continued the tour, visiting medical facilities where humans were receiving health treatments that seemed decades ahead of Earth's capabilities, agricultural areas where food was being grown using methods that produced incredible yields in small spaces, and residential sectors that housed hundreds of thousands of people in comfortable Earth-like environments. Throughout the tour, Harry was struck by how normal everything seemed. The evacuated humans appeared to be living relatively normal lives, just in a different location. If he didn't know they were aboard an alien spacecraft, he might have thought he was visiting a well-designed city. "Navigator," Travis said as they concluded the tour, "can you show us the other evacuation sites? The places where humans will be relocated permanently?" The walls of their transport became transparent again as they departed the mothership, but instead of showing the view outside, they displayed images of what appeared to be multiple star systems. "The Kythara Collective has established human colonies around 14 different star systems," Navigator explained. "Each colony is designed to accommodate between 100 million and 500 million humans, with environments tailored to support Earth-based life." The images showed worlds that looked remarkably Earth-like: blue skies, green landscapes, flowing water, and what appeared to be thriving cities built with a combination of human and alien architecture. "These are beautiful," Maureen said. "But they're so far from Earth." The distance is necessary for safety, Dr. Aylin explained. Your solar system will be dangerous for biological life for the next 2 centuries. However, we have maintained refugees from other species for much longer periods, and many choose to return to their home worlds once conditions improve. How many species have you helped relocate? Dr. Chen asked. The Kythara Collective has assisted 47 species through extinction-level events over the past 50,000 years. 31 of those species have successfully returned to their home worlds after planetary recovery. Harry felt a strange sense of comfort in learning that humanity wasn't alone in facing this kind of crisis. Dr. Aylin, what happens to species that choose not to return? Many integrate into the broader galactic community. Your species shows particular promise for successful integration. Humans are remarkably adaptable and creative. As their transport approached the surface facility where they had started, Harry realized that this visit had fundamentally changed his understanding of everything that had happened over the past month. The aliens weren't invaders. They were the cosmic equivalent of emergency rescue workers, and Earth was a disaster zone that required immediate evacuation. Dr. Aylin, Colonel Blake said, if we agree to cooperate with the evacuation process, what would you need from Earth's remaining military and government forces? Primarily, we need you to stop hiding immune populations and begin identifying and gathering non-immune populations for efficient evacuation. Your resistance networks could become coordination networks. And what about the people who don't want to be evacuated? Travis asked. Every individual has the right to choose their fate, Dr. Aylin replied. But we hope that once humans understand the reality of their situation, most will choose survival. As they landed back at the underground facility, Harry felt the weight of an impossible decision settling on his shoulders. How do you convince billions of people to abandon their home planet and trust their lives to alien beings they've been taught to fear? But as he thought about his children playing happily in the alien educational facility, apparently safe and well cared for, Harry realized that the choice might not be as impossible as it seemed. The aliens had earned some measure of trust through their actions. Now it was up to humanity to decide whether to accept the help they were offering. Chapter 11. The decision. The emergency session at the West Virginia facility brought together resistance leaders from around the world via encrypted communications. Harry sat in the main conference room with Travis and Maureen, listening to reports from underground facilities on every continent. General Morrison stood at the head of the conference table, addressing the group of military officers, scientists, and civilian leaders who represented what remained of organized human resistance. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, based on our diplomatic mission to the Kythara vessel, we now understand that the beings we have been calling aliens are actually members of a galactic rescue organization. Earth is facing an extinction-level solar event in approximately 3 weeks, and they are attempting to evacuate as much of our population as possible. Colonel Yamamoto from the Japanese resistance spoke first. General Morrison, with respect, this could still be an elaborate deception. How can we be certain of their intentions? Because their actions are consistent with their claims, Dr. Chen replied, pulling up data displays. We now have independent confirmation of the solar threat from multiple sources, including our own Mars colony. The solar flare activity is accelerating exactly as the Kythara predicted. Furthermore, Maureen added, I spent several days observing their treatment of evacuated humans. The care and consideration they're providing is extraordinary. These are not the actions of a hostile force. Dr. Rodriguez's voice came through the Mars communication link. From our observations out here, I can confirm that the Kythara have been constructing massive habitat stations for the past 6 months. The scale of their construction efforts is consistent with a genuine relocation operation. Harry raised his hand. General, I think we need to address the fundamental question. Do we have any viable alternative to cooperation? Explain your thinking, Mr. Pemberton. If we continue resistance operations, we might save a few thousand immune individuals in underground facilities. But millions of non-immune people will die in the solar event. If we cooperate with the Kythara, we might save billions. But at what cost? Asked Dr. Petrov from the European resistance. We would be accepting the end of human civilization as we know it. Travis spoke up from his seat next to Harry. Dr. Petrov, human civilization isn't ending. It's relocating. And according to the Kythara, it's temporary. A 12-year-old should not be making decisions about the future of our species, Dr. Petrov replied sharply. A 12-year-old shouldn't have to, Harry responded, standing up. But my son has demonstrated better strategic thinking about this crisis than most of the adults in this room. And he's right, if we have a choice between extinction and relocation, relocation is the obvious choice. General Morrison raised her hand for silence. The question before us is not whether to trust the Kythara completely. The question is whether the risk of cooperation is lower than the certainty of extinction if we do nothing. General, Colonel Blake said, even if we decide to cooperate, how do we convince the remaining global population to participate? Most world governments have collapsed, and the immune populations are scattered and disorganized. We use the resistance networks, Maureen suggested. Every resistance cell has contacts with immune populations in their regions. If we can coordinate a global information campaign, we can reach most of the organized survivors. Dr. Chen pulled up a global map showing resistance cell locations. We have functional communication with 63 resistance groups worldwide. Those groups have contact with an estimated 80,000 immune individuals, who in turn have knowledge of approximately 2 million non-immune survivors. That's nowhere near the billions of people the Kythara need to evacuate, Colonel Yamamoto pointed out. But it's a start, Travis said. And if we can demonstrate successful cooperation, word will spread. Humans are social animals. When they see their neighbors accepting evacuation safely, they'll be more willing to participate. Harry was impressed by his son's understanding of human psychology, but he was also worried about the enormous pressure being placed on a child who should have been in 7th grade instead of planning humanity's survival. Dr. Rodriguez, General Morrison called to Mars, what's your assessment of our timeline for decision-making? General, based on the latest solar monitoring data, I estimate 12 to 14 days before the coronal mass ejection reaches critical levels. After that point, the electromagnetic radiation will begin making Earth's surface uninhabitable. That gives us roughly 10 days to organize cooperation with the Kythara evacuation efforts, Dr. Chen calculated. 10 days to save billions of people, Harry added grimly. The discussion continued for another 2 hours, with resistance leaders debating logistics, communication strategies and contingency plans. By the end of the session they had reached a consensus. Cooperation with the Kythara offered humanity's best chance for survival. But Harry could see the emotional toll the decision was taking on everyone in the room. They were agreeing to abandon Earth, the only home humanity had ever known, and trust their species' future to alien beings they had been fighting just days earlier. General Morrison, Harry said as the formal session concluded, I'd like to volunteer my family to serve as liaisons with the Kythara. We've already established communication, and Maureen has experience with their evacuation procedures. Mr. Pemberton, that would involve significant personal risk. General, with respect, we're all facing significant risk. At least this way we might be able to help save some lives. Travis nodded enthusiastically. We could help other families understand what the evacuation process is like. Show them that it's safe. I agree, Maureen said. The more human faces we can put on this process, the more likely people are to trust it. General Morrison considered their offer. Very well. I'm authorizing the Pemberton family to serve as official liaison representatives with the Kythara. You'll work directly with Dr. Aylan to coordinate evacuation operations in the eastern United States. Over the next few days, Harry found himself in the surreal position of helping organize humanity's exodus from Earth. Working from a temporary command center that the Kythara established near the underground facility, he and his family coordinated with resistance cells across the eastern seaboard. The process was both heartbreaking and hopeful. Many immune individuals were initially suspicious of the cooperation plan, remembering family members who had been taken during the early collection operations. But when Harry showed them video footage from inside the Kythara vessels, when they could see their missing loved ones safe and healthy, most agreed to help with the evacuation efforts. Dad, Travis said one evening as they reviewed the day's evacuation statistics, how many people do you think we've helped save? Harry looked at the numbers on his tablet. Over the past week, their liaison work had helped coordinate the voluntary evacuation of nearly 150,000 people from the eastern United States. That's 150,000 people who will live to see humanity's future, he replied. But it's also 150,000 people who will never see Earth again. Do you think we're doing the right thing? Maureen asked quietly. Harry looked out the window of their temporary quarters, where he could see one of the Kythara evacuation transports preparing for another departure. Each ship carried about 2,000 people who had made the difficult decision to leave their home planet in order to survive. I think we're doing the only thing we can do, he said finally. The alternative is extinction. Travis was studying the global evacuation statistics on his tablet. Dad, at the current rate, the Kythara will be able to evacuate about 5.8 billion people before the solar event. That's better than their original estimates. But still not everyone, Maureen pointed out. No, Harry agreed. Not everyone. There would be no perfect solution to humanity's crisis. Even with maximum cooperation and efficiency, hundreds of millions of people would not be evacuated in time. Some would choose to remain on Earth despite the danger. Others would be in remote locations that the Kythara couldn't reach. Still others would be part of military or government groups that refused to cooperate with the evacuation efforts. But for the first time since the solar threat was discovered, Harry felt hopeful about humanity's future. The species would survive. Human culture, knowledge, and creativity would continue among the stars. It wouldn't be the same as the civilization that had developed on Earth, but it would be recognizably human. As Harry prepared for sleep in his quarters aboard the Kythara coordination vessel, he thought about his children's future. Travis would grow up in a galactic community, learning technologies and sciences that were beyond current human understanding. Corey and Lisa would attend schools with alien classmates, exploring worlds that existed only in humanity's wildest science fiction dreams. It wasn't the future Harry had planned for his family, but it was a future. And given the alternatives, that was enough. Outside his window, he could see the Earth turning slowly in space, still beautiful despite the invisible solar radiation that was making it uninhabitable. In a few days he and his family would leave this world forever. But humanity would survive among the stars, and someday, perhaps in 200 years, perhaps longer, their descendants might return to reclaim the planet that had given birth to their species. Chapter 12. The Exodus. 10 days before the solar event, the final evacuation phase began at dawn. Harry stood on the observation deck of the Kythara coordination vessel, watching hundreds of transport ships launching from locations around the globe. Each ship carried approximately 2,000 people, families, communities, entire towns that had made the decision to trust their future to an alien rescue operation. "Dad, look at this," Travis called from his monitoring station. At 13 now, his birthday had passed largely unnoticed during the crisis. Travis had become the primary human liaison for evacuation logistics. "We're ahead of schedule in North America and Europe, but behind in Asia and Africa." Harry joined his son at the workstation. The global evacuation map showed green indicators for regions where operations were proceeding smoothly, yellow for areas with moderate delays, and red for regions where resistance or logistical problems were preventing efficient evacuations. "What's causing the delays in Asia?" Harry asked. "Primarily governmental resistance," Dr. Chin replied from her adjacent station. She had become the overall coordinator for human participation in the evacuation. Several military leadership groups are still convinced this is an invasion rather than a rescue operation. And Africa? Infrastructure challenges. Many of the populations we need to reach are in remote areas without transportation systems capable of moving large numbers of people to evacuation sites. Maureen appeared at Harry's shoulder, carrying a cup of coffee and a grim expression. "I just finished reviewing the updated projections. Even with maximum efficiency for the remaining 10 days, we're looking at approximately 6.2 billion people evacuated. That leaves nearly 2 billion people on Earth when the solar event hits." Harry felt the familiar weight of an impossible situation. What about deep underground facilities? Can any of those populations survive the solar event? Dr. Rodriguez estimates that perhaps 50,000 to 100,000 people in the deepest military installations might survive for several months, Dr. Chin replied. But the electromagnetic radiation will eventually penetrate even those facilities. Travis looked up from his calculations. "So we're talking about 99.8% of the remaining Earth population dying within a year of the solar event." The numbers were staggering and heartbreaking, but they represented the mathematical reality of their situation. Humanity could save approximately 75% of the species through cooperation with the Kythara, or 100% of the species could die if they did nothing. "Mr. Pemberton," Dr. Aylin's voice came through the communication system. "We need human assistance with a developing situation." Harry walked to the central communication station where Dr. Aylin's image appeared on the main display. The Kythara physician looked more concerned than Harry had ever seen her. "What kind of situation, Dr. Aylin?" "We have received communications from several Earth military groups indicating they are planning to attack our evacuation operations. They appear to believe that preventing evacuations will somehow force us to find an alternative solution to the solar threat." Harry felt his blood run cold. Do they understand that there is no alternative solution? "We have attempted to explain the reality of the situation, but they refuse to accept our communications." "Dr. Chin, are you monitoring military communications in the affected regions?" Dr. Chin quickly pulled up intelligence reports on her workstation. "Dr. Aylin, I'm seeing preparation for coordinated attacks on evacuation sites in at least 6 countries. They're mobilizing everything from conventional military forces to nuclear weapons." "Nuclear weapons?" Maureen asked in shock. "Military leaders who are convinced we're facing an invasion rather than a rescue," Dr. Chin explained. They believe that destroying Kythara ships will somehow stop the solar event. Travis was already running calculations. If they attacked the evacuation ships, how many people would be killed? Each transport ship carries approximately 2,000 evacuees, Dr. Aylin replied. But the larger concern is that military attacks would force us to suspend operations in threatened regions. How many people are in those regions? Harry asked. Dr. Chin checked her population databases. Approximately 1.8 billion people in the 6 countries where attacks are being planned. The implications were staggering. Military resistance could prevent the evacuation of nearly 2 billion people, effectively condemning them to death when the solar event occurred. Dr. Aylin, Harry said, can the Kythara defend their ships against human military attacks? Our vessels have defensive capabilities, but we prefer to avoid harming humans even when they attack us. However, if necessary, we can disable attacking forces without causing permanent injury. What about continuing evacuations during military attacks? Too dangerous for the evacuees. We cannot risk harming the people we are trying to save. Harry realized they were facing a horrible irony. The very military forces that thought they were protecting humanity were actually ensuring humanity's destruction. Travis, Harry called to his son, can you get me communication links to the resistance leaders in the threatened regions? Already working on it, Dad. Over the next 4 hours, Harry and his team worked frantically to establish communication with immune populations in the regions where military attacks were being planned. The conversations were desperate and heartbreaking. You have to understand, Harry explained to Colonel Martinez, the resistance leader in Mexico, if your government attacks the Kythara ships, they'll suspend all evacuation operations in your region. That means 150 million people will die in the solar event. Mr. Pemberton, Colonel Martinez replied over the encrypted communication link, our military leadership believes the solar threat is fabricated by the aliens to justify their invasion. Colonel, we have independent confirmation of the solar threat from multiple sources, including our own Mars colony. The threat is real. Even if that's true, how can we trust beings who kidnap billions of our people without explanation? Harry understood the Colonel's perspective, but he also understood the mathematics of survival. Colonel, those billions of people are alive and safe aboard Kythara vessels. If we resist the evacuation operations, those same people will die along with everyone else. The conversation continued for another 30 minutes, but Harry could see that he wasn't making progress. Military leaders who had spent their careers preparing to defend their countries against foreign threats couldn't accept that the greatest threat came from the sun itself, and that salvation could only come from the very beings they had been fighting. Similar conversations took place with resistance leaders in 5 other countries. Some were willing to try to convince their military leadership to stand down, but others felt powerless to influence governmental decisions. Dad, Travis said after the last communication ended, what if we can't convince them? Harry looked at the global evacuation map, which showed massive numbers of people in the threatened regions who might be prevented from evacuating because of their own government's actions. Then we help as many people as we can in the time we have left, he replied. 5 days before the solar event, the military attacks began at 6 o'clock GMT with a coordinated missile strike against Kythara evacuation ships in 3 different countries. Harry watched the satellite feeds in horror as human military forces attacked the very vessels that were trying to save their populations. The Kythara response was swift but restrained. Energy weapons disabled the attacking aircraft and missile systems without destroying them, and what Dr. Aylin called neural suppression fields rendered attacking ground forces unconscious without permanent harm. But the damage was done. Evacuation operations in the affected regions came to an immediate halt. Dr. Aylin, Harry called urgently, how many people were in the process of being evacuated when the attacks occurred? Approximately 47,000 humans were aboard transport vessels when the attacks began. They are safe, but we have suspended all further operations in the affected regions. What about the people waiting for evacuation? 1.7 billion humans in the attacked regions will not be evacuated before the solar event. Harry sank into his chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the tragedy. Nearly 2 billion people would die because their own military forces had prevented their rescue. Is there any way to resume operations? Maureen asked. Not while military attacks continue, Dr. Aylin replied. We cannot risk the safety of evacuees or rescue personnel. Travis had been monitoring global communications. Dad, some of the resistance groups are trying to organize civilian evacuations without government approval. They're asking people to gather at designated sites for emergency pickup. How many people are we talking about? Maybe 200,000 to 300,000 people who can be reached by resistance networks. It wasn't much compared to the 1.7 billion who would be left behind, but it was something. Dr. Aylin, Harry said, if civilian populations can reach safe evacuation sites, can you conduct rescue operations without government authorization? If humans can gather in areas outside military interference zones, we can attempt emergency evacuations. But the time remaining makes large-scale operations impossible. Harry made a decision that felt both necessary and heartbreaking. Let's coordinate whatever emergency evacuations we can manage. Every life we save matters. 3 days before the solar event, the emergency evacuation efforts managed to rescue an additional 287,000 people from the regions where governments had attacked the Kythara ships. But as Harry watched the final transport departing Earth's atmosphere, he knew it represented only a tiny fraction of the people who could have been saved. The final statistics were both triumphant and tragic. 6.2. What's our probability of success? I estimate a 60% chance that the EMP will disrupt their navigation systems. What happens after that is anyone's guess. Harry thought those were decent odds, considering they were fighting an enemy with technology thousands of years more advanced than their own. The next few hours passed slowly. Harry checked and rechecked his equipment: radio, first aid kit, emergency food and water, flashlights, and a sidearm that Colonel Blake had insisted he carry despite his lack of military training. The recovery team ran through their procedures multiple times, ensuring everyone knew their role when the moment came. At 1800 hours, Dr. Chin announced that the target craft had left Denver and was heading toward their intercept zone. EMP generators are charged and ready, reported the lead technician. All systems nominal. Recovery teams prepare for deployment, Colonel Blake ordered. Harry climbed into the back of a military transport vehicle with 5 soldiers who would form the recovery team. They drove to a position approximately 3 miles from the missile silo, where they would wait for confirmation of a successful intercept before moving to the crash site. Target is now 15 minutes out, Dr. Chen's voice crackled over the radio. All systems standing by. Harry looked up at the evening sky, which was clear except for a few scattered clouds. Somewhere up there, an alien spacecraft was approaching with a cargo of sedated humans. In a few minutes, they would either make history by successfully attacking an alien craft, or they would watch helplessly as it continued on its way to deliver its human cargo to the mothership. 10 minutes to intercept, came the next update. The soldiers around Harry were checking their weapons and equipment one final time. They were all volunteers for this mission, all aware that they were attempting something that had never been tried before. 5 minutes to intercept. Visual contact confirmed. Harry craned his neck to look through the vehicle's small window, but he couldn't see anything unusual in the sky. 2 minutes to intercept. Target is entering the engagement zone. All EMP generators prepare to fire on my mark, Colonel Blake's voice came over the radio. Harry held his breath. This was it. Target acquired. Firing in 3, 2, 1. Mark. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then Harry saw a brilliant flash of light illuminate the entire landscape, followed immediately by every electronic device in their vehicle going dead. The radio cut out, the engine stopped, and even their digital watches went dark. Did it work? One of the soldiers asked in the sudden silence. Their answer came 30 seconds later, when a dark shape plummeted from the sky about 2 miles to the north, trailing smoke and descending much faster than any controlled landing. There. Harry pointed toward the crash site. It's down? The recovery team abandoned their disabled vehicle and began running toward the crash site on foot. It took them nearly 20 minutes to cover the rough terrain, and by the time they arrived they could see the alien craft clearly. It was larger than Harry had expected, roughly the size of a football field, and shaped like a flattened disc with angular projections around its perimeter. The hull was made of the same dark material as the mothership, but now it was cracked and smoking from the impact. Most importantly, it was definitely disabled. Spread out and look for entry points, ordered Sergeant Martinez, who was leading the ground team. Remember, our priority is human survivors. Harry approached the craft cautiously, amazed to be this close to alien technology. The surface of the hull was warm to the touch and had a strange, almost organic texture that seemed to shift and change as he watched. Over here, called out Corporal Johnson. I found what looks like an access hatch. The team converged on a section of the hull where panels had been damaged in the crash, revealing an opening large enough for a person to crawl through. Harry could see light coming from inside the craft, not the bright white of human technology, but a softer, bluer illumination that seemed to pulse with a rhythm like a heartbeat. I'm going in first, Sergeant Martinez announced. Johnson and Williams follow me. The rest of you maintain a perimeter. I'm coming with you, Harry said. Mr. Pemberton, you're not trained for this. Sergeant, I'm immune to their sedation technology, and I might be able to identify people from my area. You need me in there. Martinez considered this for a moment, then nodded. Stay behind me and follow orders. They crawled through the damaged hull into the interior of the alien craft, and Harry found himself in a space that defied his understanding of physics and engineering. The walls curved in impossible ways, creating the illusion that they were walking on the ceiling in some areas. The blue lighting came from patterns embedded in the hull itself, and there was a constant low humming sound that seemed to vibrate through his bones. Jesus, whispered Corporal Johnson. This is really an alien spaceship. They followed a corridor that sloped downward toward what Harry guessed was the cargo area. As they walked, Harry noticed that the temperature was much warmer than outside, and the air had a strange metallic taste. Up ahead, Sergeant Martinez called softly. I see movement. They rounded a corner and found themselves in a vast open space filled with rows of what looked like sleeping pods. And in those pods, just as Travis's video had shown, were dozens of humans, all lying motionless with their eyes closed. Are they alive? Harry asked, approaching the nearest pod. Sergeant Martinez checked for vital signs on the closest person, a middle-aged woman in civilian clothes. Pulse is strong, breathing is regular. She appears to be sedated but healthy. Harry moved from pod to pod looking for familiar faces. Most of the people appeared to be from the Denver area, based on their clothing and appearance. But in the third row he found someone who made his heart stop. Travis, he whispered, recognizing his 12-year-old son lying unconscious in one of the alien pods. Harry reached into the pod and touched Travis's face. His son's skin was warm, and Harry could see his chest rising and falling with regular breathing. He was alive. Dad. Travis's eyes fluttered open, confused and unfocused. Travis? It's okay, son. I'm here. We're getting you out. Travis tried to sit up but seemed weak and disoriented. Dad, where? What happened? Where are Mom and Corey and Lisa? Harry helped his son out of the pod, supporting his weight as Travis's legs wobbled. They might be on other ships, buddy. We're going to find them. Pemberton, Sergeant Martinez called from across the cargo bay. We've got a problem. Harry looked over to see what the sergeant was pointing at. In the far corner of the cargo area, 3 figures were moving toward them with that familiar mechanical gait. Controlled humans, drones, apparently still functional despite the ship's damage. Everyone out now? Martinez ordered. Bring as many survivors as you can carry. Harry scooped Travis up in his arms, grateful that his son was small enough to carry. The other soldiers began pulling unconscious humans from nearby pods, slinging them over their shoulders in firemen's carries. The control drones moved faster than Harry expected, closing the distance within human speed and coordination. As the team retreated toward the corridor, Harry got a better look at the drones' faces and felt sick. They were ordinary people, a businessman in a suit, a woman in scrubs who might have been a nurse, a teenager in a high school t-shirt. But their eyes remained closed and their movements were precise and emotionless. Go, go, go. Sergeant Martinez shouted, pushing the team toward the exit while providing cover with her sidearm. The gunshots echoed strangely in the alien corridor, and Harry was surprised to see that the bullets actually seemed to affect the drones. The controlled humans stumbled and fell, though Harry couldn't tell if they were truly injured or simply programmed to respond to perceived threats. They reached the damaged hull opening and began passing unconscious survivors through to the soldiers waiting outside. Travis was becoming more alert, able to walk with assistance, which freed Harry's hands to help with the other survivors. How many did we get? Harry asked as they cleared the crash site. 15, Corporal Johnson reported. All alive, all showing signs of recovery from sedation. It wasn't enough. Harry had seen dozens more people in the cargo bay, but they'd only been able to rescue a fraction of them before the drones forced their retreat. We have to go back, Harry said. There are more people in there. Negative, Sergeant Martinez replied firmly. The drones will be organized now, and we don't know what other defenses the ship might have. Our mission was reconnaissance and limited rescue. We accomplished both. Harry wanted to argue, but he could see more movement inside the crashed craft. The drones were regrouping and there might be other threats they hadn't encountered yet. The trek back to their extraction point took 2 hours, carrying unconscious survivors across rough terrain. By the time they reached the rendezvous, several of the rescued people were beginning to wake up, confused and disoriented but apparently unharmed. Harry stayed close to Travis as his son gradually regained full consciousness. Dad, I remember the storms in Columbus and then everything went dark. How long was I out? About a week, buddy. A week. Travis looked around at the military personnel and the barren Colorado landscape. Where are we? What happened to everyone else? Harry gave his son a simplified version of the events, the alien harvesting operations, the resistance forming in underground facilities, the electromagnetic pulse attack that had brought down the ship. Travis listened with the same serious expression Harry remembered from their last normal conversation about Mars colonization. So Mom and Corey and Lisa might be on other ships? Travis asked. We think so. And now that we know we can bring down their ships, we might be able to rescue them too. That evening, back at Cheyenne Mountain, the rescued survivors were being debriefed by medical and intelligence personnel. Harry sat with Travis in the commissary, both of them struggling to process the events of the day. Mr. Pemberton, Dr. Chin approached their table with a data tablet in hand. We've learned some important things from the survivors we rescued today. What kind of things? The people we recovered remember being processed through some kind of examination facility before being placed in the transport ship. They described medical equipment, biological sampling procedures, and what sounds like genetic testing. Harry felt his stomach tighten. They were being studied? More than that. Based on the survivors' descriptions, it appears the aliens are conducting detailed analysis of human physiology and genetics. They're not just collecting people randomly, they're building a comprehensive database of human biological information. Travis looked up from his meal. Like they're cataloging us? That's exactly what it sounds like, Dr. Chin confirmed. And there's something else. Several of the survivors report seeing areas of the ship that contained what they described as incubation chambers. Incubation chambers for what? Harry asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know the answer. Unknown. But the descriptions are consistent with advanced reproductive technology. Harry looked at his son, who was absorbing this information with the same analytical mind that had figured out the aliens' livestock management patterns. Travis, maybe you shouldn't be hearing this. Dad, I'm 12, not 5. And I've been thinking about this stuff for a week. I want to know what we're really dealing with. Dr. Chin sat down at their table. Travis, based on your research before you were captured, what do you think the aliens are trying to accomplish? Travis considered the question carefully. If they're collecting healthy humans and studying our genetics, and if they have incubation technology, I think they're trying to create a hybrid species. Part human, part alien. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Harry had been hoping that the aliens' intentions might be somehow benign, that there might be a reasonable explanation for the mass abductions. But Travis's analysis made horrible sense. Dr. Chin, Harry said quietly, how many people have they collected worldwide at this point? Our latest estimates suggest approximately 3 billion people. 3 billion. Nearly half the human population, taken for some kind of genetic experimentation program. What about the people they haven't taken? Travis asked. If they only need some humans for their experiments, what happens to the rest of us? Dr. Chin exchanged a glance with Harry before answering. We don't know. But Dr. Rodriguez on Mars has a theory that the remaining population might be surplus to their requirements. Harry understood the implication. If the aliens only needed a portion of humanity for their hybrid breeding program, the rest of the species might be expendable. Dr. Chin, Harry said, we need to accelerate our resistance efforts. How many more ships can we bring down using the EMP technology? That's the problem. Our success today has already changed their behavior. Global monitoring shows that alien craft are now avoiding areas with high electromagnetic signatures. They've adapted their flight patterns to our countermeasures. So we can't do this again? Not the same way. But the intelligence we gathered today might help us develop new strategies. Harry thought about the crashed alien ship, still sitting in the Colorado wilderness with dozens of human prisoners inside. What about the ship we brought down? Are we going to try to rescue the rest of the people? General Morrison is organizing a larger operation for tomorrow. Military engineers are working on ways to disable the remaining drones and access the rest of the cargo area. That was something at least. But Harry knew that even if they rescued everyone from that one ship, it would barely make a dent in the total number of people who had been taken. Dr. Chin, what's our communication status with other resistance groups? We're in regular contact with underground facilities in Australia, Northern Europe and parts of Asia. The total number of immune individuals in protected facilities is approximately 50,000 worldwide. 50,000 people to fight an enemy that's already captured 3 billion. It's not hopeless, Dr. Chin said firmly. Dr. Rodriguez believes she's identified additional vulnerabilities in alien technology. And there are immune populations scattered around the world who aren't in organized facilities, they're conducting guerrilla operations in rural areas. Travis had been listening to the conversation with growing intensity. Dr. Chin, has anyone tried to communicate with the aliens directly? To ask them what they want? Multiple attempts have been made. They don't respond to any form of communication we've tried. What if we're trying to communicate in the wrong way? Travis continued. What if they don't use language the way we do? Harry looked at his son with pride and amazement. Even after being captured and sedated by aliens, Travis was still thinking like a scientist. That's actually an interesting point, Dr. Chin admitted. The light displays we observed on their mothership might have been attempts at communication, but we haven't been able to decode them. Maybe we need to respond with light displays of our own, Travis suggested. Or maybe they communicate through electromagnetic patterns. Dr. Chin made notes on her tablet. I'll pass these ideas along to the communications team. Travis, would you be interested in working with our analysts? Your perspective might be valuable. I want to help however I can. Harry felt a mix of pride and concern. His 12-year-old son was volunteering to help plan humanity's resistance against an alien invasion. It wasn't the kind of childhood Harry had wanted for any of his children. But as they sat in the underground facility, surrounded by military personnel and scientists working around the clock to save what remained of human civilization, Harry realized that normal childhoods were a luxury they could no longer afford. The aliens had changed everything. The question now was whether humanity could adapt quickly enough to survive. Chapter 8. Revelations. 3 weeks after the successful downing of the alien collection craft, the Resistance had established a new operational base in an abandoned coal mine in West Virginia. The facility was deeper underground than Cheyenne Mountain, and its natural electromagnetic properties provided some protection against alien scanning technology. Harry stood in the main command center, watching updates from resistance cells around the world. The global situation had continued to deteriorate. The aliens had collected an estimated 4.2 billion people, more than half the world's population, and showed no signs of slowing down. But there had been some victories. Using intelligence gathered from the crashed craft and input from survivors like Travis, resistance groups had successfully disrupted 3 more alien collection operations. The tactics were different each time: targeted EMP strikes, coordinated attacks on controlled drones, and in one case, a successful infiltration of an alien processing facility. Dad, you need to see this, Travis called from his workstation in the communications section. Over the past 3 weeks, Travis had become an unofficial liaison between the adult resistance planners and the younger survivors who had been rescued from alien ships. His unique combination of analytical intelligence and first-hand experience with alien technology made him valuable to the operation, despite his age. Harry walked over to see what Travis had discovered. His son was studying a pattern of lights that appeared to be emanating from the alien mothership in orbit. It's the same communication sequence they transmitted when they first arrived, Travis explained. But now they're broadcasting it continuously, and the pattern is getting more complex. What do you think it means? I think they're trying to tell us something. And I think I might know how to respond. Harry looked at the display screen, which showed the alien light patterns as a series of mathematical sequences. Even to his untrained eye, there seemed to be an underlying logic to the displays. Travis, have you shared this with Dr. Chin? She's on her way down. But Dad, I think this might be important. What if the aliens are trying to negotiate? Before Harry could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. The public address system crackled to life with General Morrison's voice. All personnel to emergency stations. We have incoming alien craft. This is not a drill. Harry and Travis ran to the main command center, where dozens of monitors showed real-time tracking data from around the facility. Multiple alien craft were descending toward their location, moving in coordinated formation. How did they find us? Colonel Blake shouted over the alarm noise. Unknown, Dr. Chin replied, studying her tracking displays. But they're heading directly for our position. Estimated time to arrival, 12 minutes. Evacuation protocol? Someone called out. Negative, General Morrison's voice cut through the chaos. We're too deep underground to evacuate everyone in time. All personnel to secure positions. Prepare for siege operations. Harry grabbed Travis and pulled him toward one of the reinforced bunker areas that had been prepared for exactly this scenario. As they ran through the corridors, Harry could see other families with children heading for the same protective areas. But before they reached the bunker, Travis stopped suddenly. Dad, wait. What if they're not here to attack us? What do you mean? The communication signals I've been tracking. What if they're trying to arrange a meeting? Harry looked at his son as if he'd lost his mind. Travis, they've kidnapped billions of people. They're not here for a peaceful chat. But what if that's exactly why they're here? What if they want to explain what they're doing? It was a crazy idea, but Harry had learned to take his son's analytical insights seriously. Even if that's true, we can't take the risk. Dr. Chin? Travis called out as the analyst hurried past them. The alien communication patterns, have you been monitoring them during this approach? Dr. Chin paused, checking her handheld device. Actually, yes. The signals have changed again. They're broadcasting what looks like coordinates. Coordinates to where? To this facility. Harry felt a chill. If the aliens were broadcasting the coordinates of the resistance base, it suggested they had known about it for some time. They could have attacked at any point. So why were they approaching now when Travis had just identified new communication patterns? Dr. Chin, Harry said, I want you to consider the possibility that my son might be right. What if this isn't an attack? Mr. Pemberton, we can't afford to, Dr. Chin, Travis interrupted. Look at the approach pattern. They're not coming in fast like they did during collection operations. They're approaching slowly, and they're broadcasting those coordinates continuously. I think they want to talk. Dr. Chin studied her data for another moment, then grabbed her radio. General Morrison, this is Dr. Chin. I need to brief you on a possible alternative interpretation of the alien approach. Make it fast, Doctor. The alien craft are broadcasting location coordinates and maintaining a slow approach speed. It's possible they're attempting to initiate contact rather than conducting an attack. There was a long pause before the general responded. Dr. Chin, report to the command center immediately. And bring the Pembertons with you. They found the command center in controlled chaos. Military personnel were monitoring defensive systems while scientists tracked the approaching alien craft. The main display showed 3 alien ships maintaining position approximately 1 mile above the facility. They've stopped, Colonel Blake reported. Holding steady at 5,000 feet elevation. Dr. Chin, General Morrison said, explain your contact theory. Dr. Chin quickly outlined Travis's observations about the communication patterns and the unusual approach behavior. As she spoke, Harry could see some of the military officers exchanging skeptical glances. With respect, Doctor, Colonel Blake said, these beings have abducted half the human population. Forgive me if I'm not inclined to trust their intentions. Colonel, Travis spoke up, causing everyone in the room to turn and look at the 12-year-old boy. May I say something? General Morrison nodded. Go ahead, son. What if they never intended to hurt anyone? What if the sedation and collection operations were medical procedures? Medical procedures? Colonel Blake's voice was incredulous. Think about it from their perspective, Travis continued with the same analytical tone he'd used to explain livestock management patterns. They're a spacefaring civilization. They probably have medical technology we can't even imagine. What if they were trying to save us from something? The room went quiet except for the humming of electronic equipment. Save us from what? General Morrison asked. I don't know. But what if Earth is in danger from something they can see but we can't? What if they were evacuating people to protect them? Harry felt a strange mixture of pride and terror. His son was proposing a complete reinterpretation of everything they thought they knew about the alien invasion. Travis, Dr. Chin said carefully, that's an interesting theory, but it doesn't explain why they're taking people against their will, or why they're not communicating with our governments. Maybe they tried to communicate but we didn't understand. And maybe they don't have time to get our permission for medical procedures if there's some kind of emergency. What kind of emergency could possibly justify kidnapping billions of people? Colonel Blake demanded. Before Travis could answer, new alarms began sounding. But these weren't the attack warning alarms they'd heard earlier. These were different, deeper, more urgent. Seismic activity, called out one of the monitoring technicians. Massive earthquake, magnitude 8.5, epicenter approximately 200 miles south of here. That's impossible, Dr. Chin said, checking her geological monitoring equipment. There are no major fault lines in that area. It's not a natural earthquake, Travis said quietly. Is it? Harry looked at his son, then at the main display showing the alien craft holding position above them. A terrible suspicion was beginning to form in his mind. Dr. Rodriguez, General Morrison called to the Mars communication link. Are you monitoring seismic activity on Earth? Yes, General, came the reply from Mars. And it's not limited to your location. We're detecting massive geological disturbances worldwide. Earthquake activity, volcanic eruptions, and what appears to be shifts in Earth's magnetic field. Shifts in the magnetic field? General, I need to ask you something. Have any of your scientists been monitoring solar activity over the past few months? Dr. Chin quickly pulled up solar monitoring data on her workstation. Oh my God. What is it? Harry asked. Solar flare activity has been increasing exponentially over the past 6 months. The sun is becoming unstable. Dr. Rodriguez, General Morrison said urgently, what are the implications of this solar instability? If the trend continues, Earth could be facing a massive coronal mass ejection within the next few weeks. The electromagnetic radiation would sterilize the planet's surface. Everything would die. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. If Dr. Rodriguez was right, if the sun was becoming unstable and threatening all life on Earth, then the aliens might not be invaders at all. They might be rescuers. Travis, Harry said slowly, if the aliens knew this was coming, if they were trying to evacuate as many people as possible before Earth becomes uninhabitable, Travis finished. Dad, what if we've been fighting the wrong enemy? General Morrison looked around the command center at her staff. Dr. Chin, how quickly can we analyze the solar data and confirm Dr. Rodriguez's assessment? Give me 20 minutes. Colonel Blake, maintain defensive positions but do not engage the alien craft unless they take hostile action. General, Harry said, if Travis is right about this, if the aliens are trying to save people, then we need to establish communication immediately. Mr. Pemberton, even if this theory is correct, we can't simply trust beings who have conducted mass abductions without explanation. But we can try to talk to them, Travis said. I think I know how to respond to their communication signals. Everyone in the room looked at the 12-year-old boy who might hold the key to understanding humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. General, Travis continued, I need access to a high-powered transmitter and about 10 minutes to prepare a response message. General Morrison studied Travis's face for a long moment. Dr. Chin, how long until your solar analysis is complete? 15 minutes. Very well. Travis, you have 10 minutes to prepare your message. But we wait for confirmation of the solar threat before we transmit anything. As Travis hurried to the communications equipment with Dr. Chin, Harry realized that they were potentially moments away from humanity's first deliberate communication with an alien intelligence. And depending on what they learned about the solar threat, it might also be humanity's last chance to save itself from extinction. Chapter 9. Communication. Travis stood before the high-powered transmitter array in the communications center, his hands shaking slightly as he made final adjustments to the equipment. Around him, scientists and military personnel watched in tense silence as a 12-year-old boy prepared to speak for all of humanity. Dr. Chin, General Morrison called from across the room, what's your analysis of the solar data? Dr. Chin looked up from her workstation with a pale face. General, Dr. Rodriguez was right. Solar flare activity has increased by 400% over the past 6 months. If the trend continues at the current rate, we're looking at a coronal mass ejection large enough to strip away Earth's atmosphere within the next 3 to 4 weeks. The room went dead silent except for the humming of electronic equipment. Are you certain? The general asked. As certain as I can be with the data available. General, this isn't just a threat to human civilization. This is an extinction-level event for all life on Earth. Harry felt his knees go weak. If Dr. Chin was right, then the aliens hadn't been conducting an invasion, they had been conducting a rescue operation. And humanity had been fighting against their own salvation. Travis, General Morrison said quietly, are you ready to transmit your message? Travis nodded, though Harry could see the enormous weight of responsibility on his son's young shoulders. I've programmed a response based on the mathematical patterns they've been broadcasting. It should convey that we understand their communications and that we want to establish dialogue. What specifically are you sending? A mathematical sequence that mirrors their patterns, followed by what I think is a request for more information. If I'm right about how their communication system works, they should be able to understand that we're trying to respond intelligently. General Morrison looked around the command center. Any objections to proceeding? Colonel Blake raised her hand. General, even if they are trying to help us, we're potentially revealing our location and capabilities to a vastly superior alien force. Colonel, they're already positioned directly above our facility. I don't think our location is a secret anymore. Harry stepped forward. General, I want to add something to Travis's message. What kind of addition? I want to tell them that we understand they're trying to help, and that we're sorry for resisting. If they really are rescue workers and we've been shooting at them. Travis looked up at his father with admiration. That's a good idea, Dad. I can encode an apology sequence into the transmission. Very well, General Morrison said. Proceed with the transmission. Travis activated the transmitter array, sending humanity's first intentional message to an alien civilization. The mathematical sequences and light patterns were broadcast toward the 3 ships hovering above the facility. For 30 seconds nothing happened. Then the main display screens lit up with incoming transmissions from the alien craft. But instead of the complex mathematical patterns they had been broadcasting before, the new transmission was different. It's in English, Dr. Chin said in amazement. Words began appearing on the display screens, written in perfect English text. Human resistance leaders. We have received your communication. We are pleased that you understand our purpose. We request immediate meeting to explain critical situation. Time remaining before solar event, 23 Earth days. Current human evacuation, 4.2 billion. Target evacuation, 6.8 billion. We require your assistance to save remaining population. The command center erupted in stunned conversation. Harry felt dizzy as the implications hit him. The aliens weren't trying to wipe out humanity, they were trying to save as many people as possible before the sun killed everyone on Earth. They want to save almost 7 billion people, Dr. Chin said, reading the message again. That's over 80% of the human population. General, Travis said excitedly, they're asking for our help. If we stop fighting them and start cooperating, we might be able to save everyone. General Morrison studied the message for a long moment. Dr. Chin, based on your solar analysis, is their timeline accurate? 23 days until a catastrophic solar event? Yes, that matches our projections. And they claim to have already evacuated 4.2 billion people? That matches our estimates of missing population. Harry felt a complex mix of relief and horror. Relief that his family and the other abducted people were safe rather than being subjected to alien experiments. Horror at the realization that Earth was about to become uninhabitable. General, Colonel Blake said, I recommend extreme caution. This could be a deception designed to make us lower our defenses. Colonel, if they wanted to attack us, they could have done so at any time. They have complete technological superiority. Another message appeared on the display. We understand your suspicion. We will demonstrate our intentions. Sending transport to surface for voluntary meeting. Human delegation welcome aboard our vessel to observe evacuated populations. Travis looked up at his father. Dad, they're offering to show us the people they've taken. We could see Mom and Corey and Lisa. Harry's heart raced at the possibility of seeing his family again. But he also understood the enormous risk involved in boarding an alien spacecraft. General, Harry said, I volunteer to be part of the delegation. Mr. Pemberton, you have no diplomatic or military training. But I have family aboard their ships and I'm immune to their sedation technology. If this turns out to be some kind of trap, I might have a better chance of surviving than your trained personnel. General Morrison considered this. Dr. Chin, what's your assessment of the risk? If they wanted to capture or harm us, they could. Billion humans evacuated safely to Kythara vessels and colony worlds. 1.8 billion humans remaining on Earth, most of whom would not survive the coming solar catastrophe. Mr. Pemberton, Dr. Aylin appeared on the communication screen. We are prepared to offer your family passage to one of our established colony worlds. You have earned the right to choose your destination. Harry looked around the coordination center where he had spent the past month helping organize humanity's exodus from Earth. His family had become unofficial ambassadors for human Kythara cooperation, and their work had helped save thousands of additional lives. Dr. Aylin, what happens to the humans who remain on Earth? Is there anything more that can be done for them? We will maintain monitoring stations to observe the solar event and its effects. If any humans survive longer than our projections suggest, we will attempt rescue operations when conditions allow. And what about Earth itself? Will it ever be habitable again? Our models suggest that atmospheric conditions will begin to stabilize approximately 180 to 220 Earth years after the solar event. At that time, recolonization may be possible. Harry thought about the people who would spend their entire lives among alien worlds, never seeing the planet where humanity was born. Then he thought about the possibility that their children's children might someday return to Earth. Travis, Harry asked his son, where would you like to spend the next few years? Travis had been studying star charts showing the locations of various human colony worlds. Dad, Dr. Aylin says there's a colony world called New Terra where human children are being educated in both human and Kythara sciences. I think I'd like to go there. What about you, Maureen? I want to be wherever our family can be together, she replied. And where I can help other human families adapt to their new homes. Harry nodded. After everything they had been through, family unity was the most important consideration. Dr. Aylin, we accept your offer. Please transport us to New Terra. One day before the solar event, the Pemberton family stood on the observation deck of their transport ship, looking back at Earth one final time. The planet appeared serene and beautiful, with white clouds swirling over blue oceans and brown continents. It was impossible to tell that in less than 24 hours, massive solar radiation would begin sterilizing the surface. Do you think we'll ever see Earth again? Lisa asked. At 6 years old, she was the only member of the family who might live long enough to see Earth become habitable again. Maybe, Harry replied honestly. But even if we don't, our great-grandchildren might. Will they remember us? Corey asked. They'll remember that when humanity faced extinction, Some people chose survival over pride, Travis said with the wisdom of someone who had grown up too fast. They'll remember that we didn't give up. Harry put his arms around his family as their transport ship accelerated toward the stars. Behind them, Earth grew smaller until it was just another point of light in the vast darkness of space. Somewhere below, on the surface of their home planet, nearly 2 billion people were preparing to face the end of the world. Harry said a prayer for them, that some might survive longer than expected, that some might find ways to endure until rescue became possible, that their sacrifice would not be forgotten by the humans who had escaped to the stars. And somewhere ahead, in the direction of a star called Vega, millions of human families were beginning new lives on worlds that existed beyond Earth's solar system. They would face challenges and opportunities that no human had ever experienced, but they would face them as members of a species that had refused to surrender to extinction. The great human exodus was complete. Humanity's next chapter would be written among the stars. Chapter 13. New Terra. 2 years after the solar event, Harry stood on the observation balcony of their family apartment in New Geneva, the largest human settlement on New Terra, watching his children play in a park that shouldn't have been possible. The grass was green, the sky was blue, and the air smelled of flowers, despite the fact that they were on a planet orbiting a star 47 light-years from Earth. The Kythara had outdone themselves in creating New Terra. Using technology that human science couldn't yet comprehend, they had terraformed an entire world to replicate Earth's environment as closely as possible. The gravity was identical, the atmosphere was perfectly breathable, and the day-night cycle matched Earth's 24-hour rotation. But there were differences that reminded everyone they were no longer on humanity's birth world. The sun was slightly larger and more orange than Earth's sun. There were 2 moons visible in the night sky. And the park where his children played was shared with young Kythara, creating scenes that would have been impossible to imagine just 3 years ago. "Dad, look!" Lisa called out, pointing to a group of young Kythara who were teaching her and Corey how to play what appeared to be a 3-dimensional version of tag. The alien children moved with fluid grace, their pale blue skin shimmering in the afternoon light. At 7 years old, Lisa had adapted to life on New Terra with the remarkable resilience of young children. She spoke both English and basic Kythara, had friends from multiple species and showed no signs of missing Earth. For her this was simply home. Corey, now 11, was more aware of what they had lost, but he had thrown himself into learning about Kythara technology and science. He spent his afternoons in advanced mathematics classes that were teaching him concepts most human adults couldn't understand. Travis, now 14, had become something unique in human history, a true hybrid of human and Kythara education. He worked part-time as a research assistant in the xenobiology labs while completing his regular studies. His goal was to become part of the team planning humanity's eventual return to Earth. "Mr. Pemberton," a voice said behind him. Harry turned to see Dr. Aylin approaching the balcony. The Kythara physician had become a close family friend over the past 2 years, serving as both medical advisor and cultural guide as the Pemberton family adapted to their new world. "Dr. Aylin, please call me Harry. We've been through too much together for formal titles." "Very well, Harry. I wanted to discuss the latest communication from Earth monitoring stations." Harry felt his stomach tighten. For the past 2 years, the Kythara had maintained automated monitoring stations in Earth's solar system, observing the effects of the ongoing solar catastrophe. The news was rarely good. "What have they detected?" "The solar radiation levels are beginning to decrease slightly ahead of our original projections. Earth's atmosphere is showing signs of stabilization in some regions." Harry felt a flicker of hope. "Does that mean the recovery period might be shorter than 200 years? "Possibly. Our current estimates suggest habitable conditions might return in 150 to 180 years rather than 200 to 220. It was still longer than any human currently alive would survive, but it meant that Harry's grandchildren or great-grandchildren might see Earth again rather than distant descendants he would never meet. "Dr. Aylin, what about the humans who remained on Earth? Have your monitoring stations detected any survivors?" "The situation is complex. We have identified approximately 50,000 humans still alive in various deep underground facilities. Most are in what you call military bunkers or research stations." Harry felt a surge of amazement and relief. 50,000 people survived the solar event? Survived the initial radiation burst, yes. But their long-term survival depends on factors we cannot monitor remotely: food supplies, equipment functionality, psychological stability. Is there any way to help them? Not until solar radiation levels decrease significantly. Any rescue missions would expose our crews to lethal radiation levels. Harry understood, but the knowledge that thousands of humans were trapped in underground facilities on a dying planet was heartbreaking. "Dr. Aylin, I assume you're telling me this for a reason. The Human Colonial Council has requested that experienced Earth liaisons begin preparing for eventual recolonization planning. Your family's unique experience with both human resistance operations and Kythara cooperation makes you ideal candidates for the Advanced Planning Committee. Harry thought about the implications. You're talking about planning for something that won't happen for over a century. Long-term planning is essential for successful recolonization. The humans who eventually return to Earth will need to understand both their original home world and the technologies they will have learned during their time in exile. What about the humans who were born here on New Terra? Will they want to return to a planet they've never seen? It was a question that had been troubling Harry for months. Lisa barely remembered Earth, and any children born on New Terra would be several generations removed from humanity's original home. Would they feel any connection to a planet that existed only in stories and historical records? That will be a choice for each generation to make, Dr. Aylin replied. Some species we have helped relocate choose to remain in their new homes permanently. Others return to their original worlds when conditions allow. Most split between the two options. So humanity might become a multi-world species? That seems likely. Humans have established successful colonies on 14 different worlds now. Each colony is developing its own variations of human culture and technology. Harry found the idea both exciting and somewhat sad. Humanity would survive and thrive among the stars, but the unified global culture that had existed on Earth might be lost forever. Dr. Aylin, I'll need to discuss this with my family, but I'm interested in participating in the recolonization planning. Excellent. The first planning committee meeting is scheduled for next week. After Dr. Aylin left, Harry called his family together in their apartment's main room. The space was designed to feel familiar to humans: comfortable furniture, warm lighting, and walls that could display images from Earth or any of the other colony worlds. I want to talk to you about something important, Harry began. Dr. Aylin has asked if we'd be interested in helping plan for humanity's eventual return to Earth. Return to Earth? Maureen looked surprised. I thought we were staying here permanently. That's still an option. But Earth is recovering faster than expected. Instead of 200 years, it might only take 150 years before recolonization is possible. Travis looked up from his homework with interest. Dad, that would be about 5 generations from now. Our great-great-grandchildren could be the ones who go back. Exactly. The question is whether we want to help plan for that return. What would that involve? Corey asked. Learning everything we can about Earth's ecology, climate, and geography so we can help future generations understand what they'll be returning to. Also working with the Kythara to understand what technologies and knowledge will be needed for successful recolonization. Lisa, who had been listening carefully, raised her hand like she was in school. Daddy, would we have to go back to Earth? No, Princess. This would be about helping other people plan for the future. We can stay here on New Terra as long as we want. Good. I like it here. My friends are here. Harry smiled at his daughter's perspective. For her, New Terra was home and Earth was just a place in history books. What about the people who are still alive on Earth? Travis asked. Are we going to help them? The Kythara will attempt rescue operations when solar radiation levels decrease enough to make it safe. But that might not be for another 50 to 70 years. Travis did quick calculations in his head. So the people in the underground facilities would have to survive for decades more before rescue is possible. If they can. The family discussed the proposal for another hour, weighing the commitment against their desire to focus on building their new lives on New Terra. Finally, they reached a consensus. They would participate in the recolonization planning committee, but they would also continue to build their permanent home on New Terra. That evening, Harry stood on the balcony again, looking up at the alien constellations that had become familiar over the past 2 years. In the distance, he could see the lights of other human settlements scattered across New Terra's landscape. Nearly 2 million humans now called this world home, and more arrived on refugee ships every few months. Do you miss Earth? Maureen asked, joining him on the balcony. Every day, Harry admitted. But I'm also grateful for what we have here. Our children are safe, they're getting an incredible education, and they're part of something bigger than anything humans had ever experienced. Travis wants to become a terraforming engineer so he can help design Earth's recovery. And what about you? What do you want to do with the rest of our lives here? Maureen was quiet for a moment, looking out at the city lights. I want to help other refugee families adapt the way we have. There are still ships arriving with people who lost everything when they left Earth. They need to understand that losing their old home doesn't mean they can't build a new one. Harry took his wife's hand, thinking about the journey that had brought them from a quiet suburban neighborhood in Pennsylvania to an apartment overlooking an alien city on a world circling a distant star. Maureen, do you think we made the right choice? Leaving Earth, cooperating with the Kythara, convincing other people to leave their home planet. Harry, look at our children. Look at this city. Look at the other colony worlds where humans are thriving. We helped save our species. How could that be the wrong choice? Harry nodded, but part of him would always wonder about the people they couldn't save, the cultures that were lost when Earth became uninhabitable, and the connections to humanity's birthplace that might never be recovered. Dad. Travis appeared on the balcony, carrying a tablet with the latest communication from the Mars colony. What is it, buddy? The Mars colonists want to establish a communication relay system with Earth's underground survivors. They think they can maintain contact during the solar recovery period. That's wonderful news. And Dad? They're asking if any of the colony worlds want to contribute personnel for the project. I was thinking, maybe I could apply when I'm older. Harry looked at his 14-year-old son, who was already planning to contribute to humanity's future in ways that most adults couldn't comprehend. Travis, that sounds like exactly the kind of project you should be involved in. As they stood together on the balcony, looking up at stars that held other human colonies, Harry realized that his family had become part of something unprecedented in human history. They were pioneers of humanity's expansion into the galaxy, refugees who had become founders of a new phase of human civilization. It wasn't the future any of them had planned, but it was a future filled with possibilities that would have been unimaginable just a few years earlier. Earth would always be humanity's birthplace, but the stars were becoming humanity's destiny. Chapter 14. The Underground Earth. 5 years after the solar event, Colonel David Morrison crouched in the maintenance tunnel of Deep Rock Station, a military bunker carved into solid granite 3 miles beneath the Colorado Rockies. The radiation detectors on his environmental suit showed levels that would have been instantly lethal before the solar event, but which now represented a significant improvement from the peak radiation period 3 years ago. At 45, Morrison was the de facto leader of what they called the Deep Earth Resistance, approximately 50,000 humans scattered across 23 underground facilities worldwide. They were the remnants of Earth's population, the survivors who had either chosen to remain on the planet or had been trapped underground when the solar catastrophe struck. Colonel, Staff Sergeant Elena Vasquez appeared in the tunnel behind him, her voice muffled by her radiation mask. We're receiving another transmission from the Mars colony. Morrison followed Vasquez back to the communication center, a cramped room filled with jury-rigged equipment that barely maintained contact with the few other installations still functioning on Earth. The Mars relay system had been their only reliable link to the outside universe for the past 2 years. What's the latest from Mars? Morrison asked, settling into his chair at the communication console. They're reporting continued improvement in solar radiation levels, Vasquez replied, reading from her notes. Mars Base Alpha estimates another 10 to 15 years before surface radiation drops to survivable levels for short-term exposure. Morrison felt a familiar mix of hope and frustration. 10 to 15 years was progress. Their original estimates had suggested 30 to 50 years before surface operations would be possible. But it was still longer than many of their underground facilities could sustain themselves. What about the other bunkers? Any updates? Vasquez consulted her status reports. Raven Rock is running low on water filtration supplies. The Australian facility lost contact 3 weeks ago, could be equipment failure or... She didn't need to finish the sentence. Morrison had been listening to similar reports for 5 years. Underground facilities were failing one by one as equipment broke down, supplies ran out, or the psychological stress of confinement drove their inhabitants to desperation. Colonel Morrison, a new voice came through the Mars communication relay. This is Dr. Elena Rodriguez from Mars Base Alpha. We have an urgent message for you from the Kythara Colonial Administration. Morrison straightened up. The Kythara had maintained monitoring stations in Earth's solar system throughout the recovery period, but they rarely communicated directly with the underground survivors. Go ahead, Dr. Rodriguez. The Kythara are offering to attempt limited rescue operations for underground facilities that can safely reach the surface for short periods. They estimate they can evacuate approximately 5,000 people using specialized radiation-shielded transport. Morrison felt his heart race. After 5 years of confinement, the possibility of rescue seemed almost too good to believe. What are the requirements for rescue eligibility? Facilities must be able to maintain surface operations for at least 6 hours using radiation suits. The Kythara transport ships cannot land underground, so evacuees would need to reach surface pickup points. Dr. Rodriguez, what about radiation exposure during surface operations? The Kythara have provided detailed radiation shielding specifications. Humans in properly configured suits should be able to survive 6 hours of surface exposure without permanent damage. Morrison looked around the communication center at the faces of his staff. They had all volunteered to remain on Earth when the evacuation operations ended, believing they could outlast the solar event in their underground facilities. Now they were being offered a chance to join the rest of humanity among the stars. Dr. Rodriguez, we'll need time to evaluate our capabilities and discuss the options with other facilities. Understood, Colonel. But please be aware that this rescue window is limited. Solar activity is still unpredictable, and the Kythara cannot maintain extended operations in the radiation environment. After the communication ended, Morrison called together the senior staff of Deep Rock Station. The group of 12 men and women represented the leadership of the largest surviving underground facility on Earth. You all heard the offer, Morrison began. The question is whether we can safely reach the surface for pickup, and whether we want to take the risk. Colonel, said Dr. Sarah Chin, the facility's chief scientist, our radiation suits are rated for surface exposure, but only for limited periods. 6 hours would push them to their limits. What about our surface access routes? The main elevator shaft is functional, but we'd need to clear debris from the surface entrance. That could take several hours of surface work. Lieutenant Commander Jake Harrison, the facility's engineering officer, raised his hand. Colonel, I need to ask the hard question. Do we want to abandon Earth? It was the question Morrison had been dreading. When they had chosen to remain underground 5 years ago, they had been motivated by a combination of factors. Duty to maintain an Earth-based human presence, hope that the solar event would be shorter than predicted, and simple unwillingness to trust their fate to alien rescue operations. Now they had the opportunity to join the estimated 6.2 billion humans living on colony worlds throughout the galaxy. But taking that opportunity meant admitting that their 5-year vigil on Earth had been pointless. Jake, what's your assessment of our long-term survival prospects here? Honestly, Colonel, we can probably maintain this facility for another 10 to 15 years if nothing major breaks down. But we're operating on salvaged and improvised equipment. Eventually, something critical will fail that we can't repair. Dr. Chin nodded in agreement. Our population is also too small to be sustainable long-term. We have 2,100 people in this facility, but our age demographics are skewed toward older adults. Without genetic diversity and population growth, we're facing slow extinction anyway. Morrison looked around the table at the people who had become his family over the past 5 years. They had shared hardships, dangers, and small victories that had forged bonds deeper than most friendships. I want everyone to think about this overnight, he said finally. Tomorrow we'll take a facility-wide vote on whether to attempt surface evacuation or remain underground. That evening, Morrison walked through the residential sections of Deep Rock Station, observing the community that had developed in their underground refuge. Despite the confined conditions and constant stress, people had found ways to create meaningful lives. There were gardens growing under artificial light, schools for the few children in the facility, workshops where people created art and crafts from salvaged materials. In the recreation area, a group of musicians was performing an impromptu concert using instruments built from scavenged electronic parts. The music echoed through the tunnels, creating a moment of beauty in their harsh underground existence. Morrison paused at the facility's memorial wall, where they honored the people who had died during their 5 years underground. Some had succumbed to medical conditions that couldn't be treated with their limited resources. Others had been lost in accidents or equipment failures. A few had chosen to end their lives rather than continue the confinement. Thinking about the rescue offer? Dr. Chin approached Morrison as he stood before the memorial. Thinking about whether we're honoring these people's sacrifice by staying, or wasting it by not taking the chance to survive. Colonel, may I speak frankly? Always, Sarah. The people whose names are on this wall died believing they were part of something important. They thought maintaining a human presence on Earth during the recovery period was essential for our species' future. But what if they were wrong? What if the most important thing we can do is preserve their memories by ensuring their community survives, even if it means leaving Earth? Morrison considered Dr. Chen's words as he continued his walk through the facility. In the educational section he found Travis Chin, no relation to Dr. Chin, a teenager who had been 12 when the solar event occurred. Travis was working on what appeared to be a complex mathematical equation covering an entire wall. What are you working on, Travis? Morrison asked. Calculating optimal trajectories for Earth recolonization missions, Travis replied without looking up from his work. Based on the solar recovery data we're getting from Mars, I'm trying to figure out when it will be possible to establish permanent surface settlements again. Morrison was impressed by the teenager's sophisticated analysis. What are your conclusions? Surface settlements will be possible in about 12 to 15 years, but full planetary recolonization will take at least 50 years. The most efficient approach would be to establish initial settlements using knowledge and resources from the colonial worlds. So you think the humans on the colony worlds will eventually return to Earth? Some of them will. But Colonel, I also think the humans who stayed underground have important knowledge that the colonial populations don't have. We understand Earth's recovery process in ways that people living on other planets can't. Morrison realized that Travis had identified something important. The underground survivors weren't just refugees waiting for rescue, they were potentially valuable contributors to humanity's eventual return to Earth. Travis, would you be interested in joining the colonial worlds if rescue becomes possible? Only if I could eventually return to help recolonize Earth. This is our planet, Colonel. Even if we have to leave temporarily, we should plan to come back. The next morning, Morrison called the facility-wide assembly to discuss the rescue offer. The main auditorium, carved from solid rock, was filled with the entire population of Deep Rock Station. Morrison looked out at faces that showed the wear of 5 years underground, people who had aged quickly under the stress of confinement and uncertainty. You all know about the Kythara rescue offer, Morrison began. Today we need to decide whether to attempt evacuation or remain here until Earth's surface becomes habitable again. The discussion that followed was emotional and complex. Arguments for evacuation centered on safety, the opportunity to reunite with family members who had been evacuated earlier, and the chance to contribute to humanity's growth among the stars. Arguments for remaining focused on duty to Earth, the value of maintaining a human presence during the recovery period, and simple attachment to their home planet. Dr. Chen made the case for evacuation. We have preserved human knowledge and culture during Earth's most dangerous period. Now we have the opportunity to share that knowledge with the larger human community and help plan for eventual recolonization. Lieutenant Commander Harrison argued for staying. We've survived 5 years underground because we believed maintaining an Earth-based human presence was important. If we leave now, we abandon that mission. The debate continued for 3 hours before Morrison called for a secret ballot vote. The result was close. 1,247 votes for attempting evacuation, 853 votes for remaining underground. Morrison stood before the assembly with the results. The majority has voted to attempt evacuation. However, this will be a voluntary operation. Anyone who chooses to remain underground will be supported in that decision. Over the next week, Deep Rock Station was consumed with preparation for the most dangerous operation they had ever attempted. Surface access routes were cleared, radiation suits were tested and modified, and supplies were organized for the people who would remain behind. In the end, 1,489 people chose to attempt evacuation while 611 decided to remain underground to maintain the facility and continue monitoring Earth's recovery. Morrison stood in the main elevator shaft as the first group of evacuees prepared to ascend to the surface. After 5 years underground, they were about to see the sky again, even if it was a sky poisoned by solar radiation. Colonel, Sergeant Vasquez said over the radio, Kythara transport is approaching the pickup zone. Surface radiation levels are within acceptable limits for 6-hour exposure. Morrison took a deep breath of recycled underground air, knowing it might be the last time he breathed the atmosphere of their underground refuge. All teams begin ascent. As the elevator carried them toward the surface, Morrison thought about the people remaining behind and the people waiting in the stars. Humanity had been scattered by the solar catastrophe, but they were finding ways to maintain connections across the vast distances of space. The elevator stopped, and the surface doors opened to reveal a landscape that looked like an alien world. The sky was a sickly yellow color, and the ground was covered with a fine layer of radioactive dust. But it was Earth's surface, scarred and poisoned, but still the planet where humanity was born. In the distance, Morrison could see the Kythara rescue ship descending through the toxic atmosphere, coming to carry another group of humans to safety among the stars. As they walked across the contaminated landscape toward their rescue, Morrison realized that they weren't abandoning Earth, they were carrying Earth with them in their memories, their knowledge, and their determination to someday return home. Chapter 15. The Return New Terra. 157 years after the solar event, Dr. Lisa Pemberton stood before the holographic display in the Earth Recolonization Planning Center, studying the latest atmospheric readings from her home planet. At 164 years old, her life extended by Kythara medical technology that had become routine for humans living among the stars, she was one of the few people alive who still remembered Earth before the solar catastrophe. Grandmother Lisa, her great-great-grandson Marcus said, appearing at her side with a tablet full of colonization logistics. The atmospheric analysis team confirms that oxygen levels have stabilized at pre-event levels. Lisa smiled at the title, Grandmother, which had become her designation as the oldest member of the Pemberton family line. Marcus was 25 years old, born on New Terra, and one of the lead engineers planning humanity's return to Earth. Marcus, show me the radiation readings from the major continental areas. Marcus activated the holographic display, which showed a three-dimensional map of Earth with color-coded radiation levels. Most of the planet now showed green or yellow indicators, safe for human habitation. The only remaining red zones are around the former nuclear installations and a few areas where radioactive materials concentrated during the atmospheric storms, Marcus explained. Overall, about 85% of Earth's landmass is now suitable for recolonization. Lisa studied the display, comparing it to her childhood memories of Earth's geography. It was remarkable how much the planet had recovered. The Kythara had been correct in their prediction that Earth would be habitable again after approximately 160 years, though the recovery had taken slightly longer than their most optimistic estimates. What about the infrastructure assessment teams? They've completed surveys of 50 major cities. Most infrastructure will need to be completely rebuilt, but the underlying geological foundations are intact. The recolonization teams think they can establish the first permanent settlements within 2 years of landing. Lisa nodded, feeling a complex mix of excitement and apprehension. For over 150 years, Earth had existed only in historical records, cultural preservation programs, and the memories of the few surviving evacuees. Now it was about to become a living world again. Marcus, has the Colonial Council made a final decision about the recolonization timeline? The first wave of reconnaissance teams will depart next month. If their assessments confirm the environmental data, the first permanent settlement mission will launch in 18 months. How many people are planning to return in the first wave? Approximately 50,000 volunteers from 14 different colony worlds. Most are descendants of the original Earth evacuees, but there are also volunteers from other species who want to help with the recolonization effort. Lisa was intrigued by the multi-species aspect of the return mission. Over the past 150 years, human colonies had become integrated into the broader galactic community. Many humans had married individuals from other species, and the children of these unions had become citizens of a truly interstellar civilization. And what about the people who choose not to return? Lisa asked. Current estimates suggest that about 15% of the human population wants to return to Earth permanently. Another 30% are interested in temporary residence or rotation assignments. The majority prefer to remain on their current worlds. It wasn't surprising, Lisa thought. Most humans alive today had been born on colony worlds and had no personal connection to Earth beyond cultural heritage. For them, worlds like New Terra, Nova California, and the Kythara designed habitats around Vega were home. Marcus, I want to ask you a personal question. Are you planning to join the recolonization missions? Marcus was quiet for a moment, studying the holographic Earth. Grandmother, I've been thinking about that for months. It's important to me because it's important to our family. But New Terra is where I was born, where my friends live, where my research projects are based. That's a perfectly reasonable perspective, Lisa said gently. Earth doesn't need to be home for everyone. The important thing is that it becomes home again for some people. But what about you, grandmother? Are you planning to return? Lisa looked at the holographic display showing her planet of birth, now recovered from the catastrophe that had forced humanity to abandon it over a century and a half ago. Marcus, I'm 164 years old. Even with life extension technology, I probably don't have many decades left. The question is whether I want to spend those years on a world I remember, or continue building the life I've made here. It was a question that had been troubling Lisa for months. Earth represented her childhood, her family's origins, and the cultural heritage of humanity. But New Terra represented the life she had built, the relationships she had formed, and the work she had done to help humanity adapt to life among the stars. Have you discussed it with the rest of the family? Your great-grandfather Travis wants to join the recolonization effort. He says he spent his entire career preparing for humanity's return to Earth, and he wants to see the work completed. Your great-grandmother Maureen is less certain. She's concerned about leaving the refugee assistance programs she's been running here. What about great-uncle Corey? Corey is planning to establish a research station on Earth to study the ecological recovery. He thinks the planet's regeneration might provide insights for terraforming other worlds. Lisa was proud of how her family had responded to the opportunity to return to Earth. Each member was approaching the decision based on their own values and life circumstances, rather than feeling obligated to return simply because of their historical connection to the planet. Dr. Pemberton, a voice interrupted their conversation. Lisa turned to see Dr. Aylin approaching the planning center. The Kythara physician looked exactly the same as she had 150 years ago, thanks to her species' much longer lifespan. Dr. Aylin, it's wonderful to see you. Are you here about the recolonization plans? Indeed. The Kythara Collective has completed its analysis of Earth's recovery, and we're prepared to provide technological assistance for the recolonization effort. What kind of assistance? Transportation, medical support, and environmental monitoring during the initial settlement period. We want to ensure that humanity's return to Earth is successful. Lisa felt a wave of gratitude toward the Kythara. They had saved humanity from extinction, supported human colonies for over 150 years, and were now helping to make humanity's return to Earth possible. Dr. Aylin, on behalf of all humans, thank you for everything your people have done for us. Lisa, it has been our privilege to assist humanity during this transition. Your species has demonstrated remarkable adaptability and resilience. We believe Earth's recolonization will be highly successful. Do you think humans will be able to rebuild the kind of civilization we had before the solar event? Dr. Aylin considered the question carefully. I think humans will build something different and possibly better. The humans returning to Earth will have knowledge and perspectives gained from 150 years of interstellar experience. Earth's new civilization will be informed by contact with other species and technologies. Marcus looked up from his planning calculations. Dr. Aylin, what happens to the relationship between Earth and the colony worlds once recolonization is established? That will be determined by humans themselves. Some species choose to maintain close ties between their original worlds and colony worlds. Others develop as independent civilizations that share cultural heritage but pursue different paths. Lisa thought about the implications. Humanity had begun as a single-world species on Earth. The solar catastrophe had forced them to become a multi-world species scattered throughout the galaxy. Now they had the opportunity to be both, a species with deep roots on their original planet and branches extending throughout the stars. Dr. Aylin, Lisa said, I've made my decision about returning to Earth. What have you decided? I want to be part of the first permanent settlement mission. I'm one of the last people alive who remembers Earth before the solar event. I think it's important for someone with those memories to be part of the recolonization effort. Marcus looked surprised. Grandmother, are you certain? The initial settlements will be challenging, with limited infrastructure and potential dangers. Marcus, I've lived through the evacuation from Earth, the establishment of colonies on alien worlds, and the development of humanity's place in the galactic community. I think I can handle the challenges of returning home. Dr. Aylin nodded approvingly. Lisa, your presence during the recolonization will provide valuable continuity between Earth's past and its future. Over the next several months, Lisa worked with the recolonization planning teams to prepare for humanity's return to Earth. The logistics were staggering, transporting 50,000 people across interstellar distances, establishing infrastructure on a planet that had been uninhabited for over 150 years, and creating a society that could bridge the gap between Earth's history and humanity's interstellar future. The departure day arrived on a clear morning on New Terra. Lisa stood on the observation deck of the colony ship, New Horizons, looking down at the world that had been her home for most of her life. The city of New Geneva sprawled across the landscape below, populated by millions of humans and aliens who had built a thriving civilization on this distant world. Grandmother? Marcus appeared beside her. I wanted to say goodbye and to give you this. He handed her a small device that looked like a combination of human and Kythara technology. What is it? A communication relay that will let you stay in contact with all the family members remaining on New Terra. Distance shouldn't separate our family again. Lisa hugged her great-great-grandson, feeling the weight of generations between them. Marcus, take care of New Terra for all of us. This world saved humanity, and it will always be important to our family. And you take care of Earth, grandmother? Make it a place where future generations would be proud to live. As the colony ship departed New Terra and began its journey toward Earth, Lisa watched through the observation windows as her adopted home grew smaller and eventually disappeared among the stars. Around her, 50,000 humans from 14 different worlds were beginning their own journey toward a planet most of them had never seen. The voyage would take 6 months using advanced Kythara propulsion technology. When they arrived, they would face the enormous challenge of rebuilding human civilization on a world that had been empty for over a century and a half. But Lisa felt optimistic about humanity's prospects. The species that returned to Earth would be different from the one that had left, more experienced, more technologically advanced, and enriched by contact with other civilizations. Earth's new chapter would be written by humans who had learned to think beyond the boundaries of a single world. As the ship accelerated toward Earth, Lisa began planning for the moment when she would again breathe the air of the planet where she was born. After 157 years among the stars, humanity was finally coming home. Epilogue, Full Circle Earth New Geneva Colony, 2 years after recolonization, Dr. Lisa Pemberton walked slowly along the newly constructed boardwalk overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, her great-great-granddaughter Sarah walking beside her. At 166 years old, Lisa moved carefully but with determination, supported by a walking stick carved from new Terra wood and equipped with Kythara mobility assistance technology. The view from the boardwalk was both familiar and strange. The Atlantic Ocean looked exactly as Lisa remembered from her childhood, with the same endless blue stretching to the horizon. But the coastline had changed dramatically during the 159 years since the solar event. New beaches had formed, old landmarks had eroded away, and the entire ecology was different from what Lisa remembered. "Great-grandmother," Sarah said, "tell me about what this area looked like before the evacuation." Sarah was 12 years old, born on Earth after the recolonization but named for her ancestor's sister who had died during the underground years. She was part of the first generation of humans to be born on Earth since the solar catastrophe, and she represented the future of humanity's relationship with their home planet. "There used to be a city called Boston about 50 miles north of here," Lisa replied, pointing toward the coastline. "It had tall buildings, busy streets, and millions of people. Your great-great-grandfather Travis and I used to visit there when we were children." "What happened to it?" "The solar storms destroyed most of the buildings, and the coastline changes during the recovery period washed away what remained. Now it's underwater like most of the old coastal cities." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. She had learned about Earth's pre-event civilization in school, but hearing personal memories from someone who had actually lived through it made the history feel more real. "Do you miss the way Earth used to be?" Lisa considered the question as they continued their walk. Around them, the new Geneva colony bustled with activity. The settlement had grown rapidly over the past 2 years, with 50,000 colonists establishing farms, research facilities, manufacturing centers, and residential areas using a combination of salvaged Earth materials and advanced colonial technologies. "I miss some things," Lisa said honestly. "I miss the forests I played in as a child, the animals that used to live here, the cities where I went to school. But Sarah, look around us. Earth isn't the same as it was before, but it's beautiful in new ways." Sarah followed her great-grandmother's gaze across the colony. The architecture was unlike anything that had existed on pre-event Earth. Buildings that combined human aesthetic preferences with Kythara engineering principles and materials from a dozen different worlds. Gardens grew using agricultural techniques learned on colony worlds, producing crops that had never existed on original Earth. Children from multiple species played together in parks designed according to principles developed during 150 years of interstellar community building. "The Earth we're rebuilding is informed by everything humans learned during our time among the stars," Lisa continued. "We're not trying to recreate the old world, we're building something new and hopefully better." They paused at an overlook where they could see the colony's main research complex. Teams of scientists were studying Earth's ecological recovery, developing new technologies for planetary restoration, and conducting experiments that would benefit both Earth and the colony worlds. "Great-grandmother, do you think more people will come back to Earth?" "Some will. There are already plans for 5 more colonies in different regions. But most humans will probably remain on their colony worlds. Earth doesn't need to be home for everyone, it just needs to be home again for some people." As they watched, a transport ship appeared in the sky, descending toward the colony's spaceport. Lisa knew it was carrying visitors from New Terra, including her son Travis, now 171 years old and one of the senior coordinators of the Earth recolonization project. "Sarah, would you like to walk down to the spaceport to meet your great-grandfather Travis?" "Yes." "Is he bringing news from the other colonies?" "Probably. And he always brings gifts from New Terra." They made their way slowly through the colony toward the spaceport, passing through neighborhoods that represented humanity's new relationship with Earth. The residential areas were designed to have minimal environmental impact, using renewable energy sources and sustainable materials. The industrial areas employed manufacturing techniques that produced no pollution and recycled all waste materials. The agricultural areas used biological diversity principles learned from multiple worlds to create ecosystems that were more robust than anything that had existed on original Earth. At the spaceport, they joined other colonists who were welcoming arrivals from the various human colony worlds. Lisa watched the passengers disembark and marveled at the diversity they represented. There were humans who looked traditionally human, others who showed the subtle biological modifications that had been adopted on some colony worlds, and still others who were the children of human-alien marriages and represented new branches of human evolution. "Lisa." Travis appeared among the passengers, moving with the aid of advanced mobility technology but still showing the intellectual energy that had driven him throughout his long life. "How are you adapting to life back on Earth?" "Better than I expected," Lisa replied, embracing her brother. It feels like coming home even though everything is different. And this must be Sarah, Travis said, kneeling down to meet his great-great-granddaughter. I brought you something from New Terra. He handed Sarah a small device that projected holographic images of the family members still living on New Terra. Sarah gasped with delight as she saw three-dimensional pictures of her relatives on the distant world. Travis, Lisa said, what's the latest news from the Colonial Council? Remarkable progress on all fronts. The Mars colony has established a permanent research station, 3 new human worlds have been successfully terraformed, and first contact protocols have been established with 2 new alien civilizations. And what about Earth? Are the other recolonization missions proceeding? Yes, but slowly. The colony in what used to be called Europe is thriving, and there are plans for settlements in Asia and South America. But most humans seem content to visit Earth rather than relocate permanently. Lisa understood. For humans born on worlds like New Terra, Earth was culturally important but not emotionally necessary. The colony worlds had become true homes for most of humanity. Travis, do you think we made the right choice in returning to Earth? Absolutely. Earth needed to have humans living on it again, even if it's only a small percentage of our total population. This planet is where our species began, and it will always be important to our identity. As they walked back through the colony together, 3 generations of the Pemberton family representing humanity's journey from Earth to the stars and back again, Lisa reflected on everything that had happened since that morning 159 years ago when alien ships had first appeared in Earth's sky. Humanity had faced extinction and chosen survival over pride. They had trusted alien rescuers and discovered allies among the stars. They had built new homes on distant worlds and learned to think of themselves as citizens of the galaxy rather than just residents of Earth. And now they had returned home, bringing with them the knowledge and experience gained during their long exile among the stars. Great-grandmother, Sarah said as they reached their home in the residential district, do you think I'll ever visit the other human worlds? I hope so, Sarah. You're part of the first generation that will grow up thinking of interstellar travel as normal. You might spend your life moving between Earth and the colony worlds, helping to maintain the connections between all the different branches of humanity. That sounds wonderful. Lisa looked up at the evening sky, where several stars were visible that she knew hosted human colonies. In the distance, she could see one of the Kythara monitoring stations that continued to help ensure Earth's environmental stability. And on the horizon, the lights of other human settlements dotted the coastline, each representing families who had chosen to make Earth their home again. Travis, Lisa said as they reached her house, there's something I want to show you. She led him to her study, where she had been working on a project for the past year. On her desk was a thick manuscript, part memoir, part historical record, part guide for future generations. It's the complete story of humanity's evacuation, exile, and return, Lisa explained. Everything from the first appearance of the alien ships to the establishment of New Geneva colony. I want future generations to understand not just what happened, but how it felt to live through it. Travis picked up the manuscript and read the title page, The Harvest, A Record of Humanity's Journey to the Stars and Back Again, by Dr. Lisa Pemberton. Lisa, this is exactly what the historical archives need. Personal accounts from people who lived through the entire experience. I'm hoping other survivors will add their own accounts. The Chinese resistance leader who helped save 2 million people in Asia. The Australian underground facility commander who kept her people alive for 12 years. The Mars colonist who provided the scientific data that made recolonization possible. What about our parents? Have you included their stories? Lisa nodded. Everything I can remember about Mom and Dad, about our grandparents, about the life we had before the solar event. I want people to understand that the evacuated populations weren't just statistics, they were families, communities, entire cultures that were relocated to preserve them. Travis sat down and began reading the opening chapter, which described that peaceful autumn morning when their family had sat on the back porch in Millfield, Pennsylvania, listening to birds chirping and watching wind chimes dance in the breeze. It's hard to believe that was 159 years ago, Travis said quietly. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime. Sarah, who had been listening from the doorway, approached the desk with curiosity. Great-grandmother, will you read me some of the story? Which part would you like to hear? The part about the first time you saw the alien ship. Lisa opened the manuscript to the appropriate chapter and began reading aloud the account of that terrifying and awe-inspiring moment when humanity realized they were not alone in the universe. As she read, Lisa realized that Sarah was experiencing these events as ancient history, the way Lisa herself had once heard stories about World War II or the Great Depression. But for Sarah, these weren't just historical events, they were family history, the story of how her ancestors had survived an extinction-level catastrophe and helped ensure humanity's future among the stars. "Great-grandmother," Sarah said when Lisa finished reading, "do you think something like the solar event could happen again?" "It's possible, Sarah. But if it does, humanity will be prepared. We have colonies on dozens of worlds now, so we're not vulnerable to any single catastrophe. And we have allies like the Kythara who can help us respond to threats we might not see coming." "Will the Kythara always help us?" Travis answered this question. The Kythara have been helping species survive extinction events for 50,000 years. They consider it their mission in the galaxy. As long as that mission continues, they'll be there when species need them. "But Sarah," Lisa added, "humanity has also learned to help itself. The technologies we've developed, the colonies we've built, the relationships we've formed with other species, all of that makes us stronger and more resilient than we were 159 years ago." As the evening grew late, Travis prepared to return to his guest quarters in the colony. Before leaving, he hugged his sister and great-great-granddaughter. "Lisa, I'm proud of what you've accomplished here. This colony represents the best of both old Earth and new humanity. Travis, we all accomplished this together. Every human who chose evacuation over extinction, every scientist who worked on the colony projects, every family that adapted to life among the stars, we all made this possible." After Travis left, Lisa and Sarah sat on the porch of their Earth home, looking up at the stars. The night sky on Earth was different now from what Lisa remembered as a child. Some constellations had shifted due to gravitational changes during the solar event, and the aurora effects created by residual electromagnetic activity painted the sky in colors that hadn't existed before the catastrophe. But it was still recognizably Earth sky, and sitting under it made Lisa feel connected to every generation of humans who had ever looked up at the stars and wondered what might be possible. "Great-grandmother," Sarah said, "when I grow up, I want to write stories too. Stories about what it's like to be born on Earth after the return." "That's a wonderful idea, Sarah. Each generation needs to tell its own story. Will you help me learn how to write them?" "As long as I'm able to, yes." As they prepared to go inside, a shooting star streaked across the sky, probably debris from one of the monitoring satellites that continued to watch over Earth's recovery. "Make a wish," Lisa told Sarah. Sarah closed her eyes and concentrated for a moment. "I wish that all the human worlds would always stay connected, and that Earth would always be here for people who want to come home." Lisa smiled at her great-great-granddaughter's wish. It captured perfectly the balance that humanity had achieved, scattered among the stars but still rooted in their original home. "That's a very good wish, Sarah." As they went inside and prepared for bed, Lisa thought about the remarkable journey that had brought humanity from the brink of extinction to its current position as a thriving, multi-world species. The path had been difficult and sometimes heartbreaking, but it had led to a future that was richer and more diverse than anything their ancestors could have imagined. Outside, the lights of New Geneva Colony continued to shine through the night, a beacon of human resilience and adaptability on a world that had been empty for over a century and a half. In the distance, similar lights marked other human settlements along the coast, each representing families who had chosen to be part of Earth's resurrection. And far above, invisible in the night sky, ships continued to travel between Earth and the dozen worlds where humans had built new homes, carrying people, knowledge, and culture in an endless circulation that connected all the scattered branches of humanity. The harvest that had begun with alien ships collecting humans from a dying planet had evolved into something far greater, a flowering of human civilization across the galaxy, rooted in Earth but no longer limited by it. Lisa fell asleep that night in the bedroom of her Earth home, listening to the sound of waves on a beach that hadn't existed when she was a child, dreaming of the vast community of humans and aliens that now stretched across the stars. The species that had once faced extinction on a single world had become citizens of the galaxy, and the future held possibilities that were truly infinite. The D&D authors note the harvest is a story about survival, adaptation, and the choices that define us in moments of crisis. While it begins as a tale of alien invasion, it evolves into something more complex, an exploration of what it means to be human when humanity itself must evolve to survive. The novel examines themes of trust, sacrifice, and the tension between preserving the past and embracing an uncertain future. The Pemberton family's journey from suburban normalcy to galactic citizenship represents the broader human experience of growth through adversity. At its heart, The Harvest suggests that true strength lies not in resisting change, but in adapting to it while maintaining the essential values that define us. Humanity survives not by remaining the same, but by becoming something greater than what they were before. The story also explores the idea that home is not just a place but a feeling that can be recreated wherever people choose to build it together. Earth remains important as humanity's birthplace, but the colony worlds become equally valid homes for the humans who build their lives there. Finally, the novel celebrates the power of cooperation and understanding across differences. The relationship between humans and the Kythara evolves from fear and suspicion to trust and partnership, suggesting that our greatest challenges often require us to work with those we initially see as threats. In a universe full of wonders and dangers, survival depends not on strength alone, but on the wisdom to know when to fight and when to accept help from unexpected allies. Byron Avant genre, science fiction horror thriller publication note. This novel contains themes suitable for mature young adult and adult readers. Content includes mild language, intense situations, and complex moral dilemmas related to survival and sacrifice.